So yeah, here we are. A couple months later than what it was meant to be, but we're finally here with Doug Nevins, wrestler, MMA fighter, gym owner. List of accomplishments are endless.
Yeah, pretty much. I've got.
Have a heater this time, so
Yeah,
you're not going
yeah,
to
I'm
get
not-
shivering away.
It was relentless. Like, Jesus.
Felt like the Wim Hof room.
Yeah. So, Doug, do you want to speak a bit about how you got involved in wrestling and kind of early? Is it the same avenue as everyone else? Is it a WWE avenue?
No, no. So like I've never really been into WWE. It's more been like I kind of kicked off combat sports as a whole. Like my dad did karate when he was younger, and that's kind of like my nan and granddad did it as well. So that's always something I've wanted to maybe go and try and do. But then there wasn't much going on around here in terms of karate, so I kind of went, oh, I'll have a look and try something else. Tried boxing out for a little while, Muay Thai, and then kind of met Aiden, Martin, Kev, and that, and got training Jiu-Jitsu and that as well, and then kind of from there going into the kind of MMA side of things, wrestling became this thing that was needed, and you can't go in and not wrestle. It's there, and if you don't have that wrestling, like you can have boxing, jiu-jitsu, you need
You
that
look at
wrestling
any
as
of
well.
the
So
high-level guys, and they've all got a solid wrestling base.
exactly,
Like,
yeah.
I think there's like a Bruce Lee quote somewhere saying that it's the most important martial art because you control where the position situation
That's
goes,
it.
right?
It's just being able to control people totally, and from there, like that kind of became my strongest asset when I was doing MMA. I just found it one of them things I like to do. I like to take people down. At the time when I first started, it was more like double legs, and kind of high crotch sort of stuff that I was doing, picking people up and dumping them. That was kind of the route I went into, and I kind of thought, oh, I really enjoy this. This is good. And I just started kind of watching videos and stuff on YouTube, looking a bit more into the actual wrestling side of it on its own, to add to the MMA game. But at the same time, I kind of fell in love with wrestling. That's something that is just from that point on, I've used it all the time, and I just love doing it.
was there much kind of like coaching earlier? I know you're involved in a lot more like getting coached and things these days, but earlier side, was there anyone directly coaching you, or was it mostly self-taught
Again,
stuff?
like Martin and Kev,
Yeah.
Aiden, these guys that that I was training with anyway, that were my coaches, teammates. These guys were doing the exact same thing, looking online, finding things, coming in and teaching it. So I was always learning off them guys too. It wasn't until a couple, since I've got more into wrestling now, that I've had a specific wrestling coach, like Nico and Vio when I was training through Echo, and now with the Scotland team.
I want to speak a bit about Vio, because I've just got a little bit about him. He's an 8 times British wrestling champion. Like,
yeah. He's competed at the Commonwealth Games twice, and yeah. So I kind of like after my first proper MMA fight, like that. After doing that, like most of the fight was wrestling for me. Like I was striking, but I was working my way in. I was taking the guy down, standing back up, repeating. A lot of it was wrestling based and grappling based. So I just kind of thought I want to give this a bit more of a go and try this more, try to get into this more and compete in this as a sport as well. So I was looking around to see where I could go, and like initially it was like Glasgow. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So I was still training wrestling at SBG, so still doing that with Martin, Kev, Aiden, and all the guys down there. So that was what I was doing at that point. I was like, right, I want to see if I can go and find somewhere else. So I kept looking, eventually found Vio's place in Old Meldrum at Coast Sports Academy. So they do like gymnastics and
I've seen the facility online. It looks like an awesome
it's
place.
absolutely huge, man.
Seems to be like quite a common link between gymnastics and wrestling. I remember seeing George St. Pierre like on the rings and that. Do you remember when he was like training for fights?
Like,
Yeah. Well, a lot of them say like gymnastics is for kind of first way to go if you're getting kids into at a young age.
Is his wife not like an international
Yes,
gymnast?
I think she competed for Scotland as well in gymnastics or for GB. Wow. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. So she, his wife's competed as well. So like she runs all the gymnastics, and VO.
Do they do like kind of mobility stuff that's combined, or is it like just basically your gymnastics, your wrestling, or is there a lot of like mobility classes?
I think for through there, so I just went for the wrestling stuff, and most of it was like kids groups, and they just did a lot of from what I remember watching when I was there, like work on the beams and stuff like that, and they were doing what's the one with the ribbons? That one.
Oh yeah,
We
know what you're on about.
Stuff. So, because like you go into the kind of main room past the reception, and there's just 2 massive wrestling mats, and then there's a load of gymnastics equipment, and then there's like what's the other thing they can do with the poles that like swing around. They'll jump to so they had like a big foam pit in the back as well. So like after wrestling, sometimes we'd be over at the foam pit and we'd just be like suplexing each other into the foam. But yeah, so they've got that there. But yeah, it's an insane facility. So they've got like two mats, wrestling mats in the gymnastics room, and then they've got a gym, but it's a completely separate building. So like through in that room now, they had just like a little classroom that they were running circuits and stuff from, and that got kitted out as a wrestling room as well. So yeah,
because it does seem to be, I don't want to say spreading to the west. It sounds a bit political saying it like that, but from like the early days, it seems like the Americans and probably the Eastern Europeans had like a massive advantage when it comes to this side of the pond in terms of wrestling, where it seems like that gap, if it's not closed already, is closing.
Absolutely. Like I can't think of any high level MMA British guys that are certainly 10 years ago. Now you're seeing a lot more of them, but a lot of the British guys were all striking based. You know,
like Bisping and that.
Yeah. John Hathaway and guys like that. You know, it wasn't much to do with the wrestling, but you're starting to certainly see it now. Like Paul Craig's got amazing wrestling.
Was his last fight when he had the guy in the armbar and he was like elbowing him at the head at the same time, and the guy's
I just think like if you look at Scottish MMA as a whole, it's definitely on the rise. And I think that initially when you had Stevie Ray, and I always forget the other guy that initially went in the UFC.
Robert Whiteford.
They're 2 like all round guys who've not really got a weak point in their
jack of all trades kind
of. There's no strong point, but there's no weak point, if you know what I mean. So, and I think you're starting to see that developed because Americans have always got good wrestling base. You've got your like Eastern Europeans who are wrestling based, but they've also got like this sambo style. And I think British, you're starting to see we're very well rounded with the fighters that they're taking through. But I don't think wrestling's ever going to be a strong point for British fighters, especially.
Well, like if you look at countries like America, they have college programs around the sport, right, and state funding.
Is there anything like that in this country?
It's massive. So everywhere else is absolutely massive. We do have like the British Wrestling Association that kind of put together all the training camps and stuff like that. Scottish wrestling is now being created as well. So our team manager, I can't say his last name properly, Vasily Journey, I think that's correct. Don't quote me. But he's put a lot of work, and the coaches with Scottish wrestling as well, Vlad, Gladcoff and David Connolly, they've put a lot of work into creating that team for like Scottish wrestling now. So it's growing more and more. But yeah, like there's camps and stuff on for wrestling over here, but you know, a lot of the coaches that we have are Eastern European coaches. You know, that are coming in, and we're, you know, it's crazy when you see some of the wrestlers that are over here. They're really, really high level. They're teaching at all different clubs over here, so it is coming up now. And a lot more people are, you know, doing it. It's getting bigger and bigger. The more every time I go down to camps and stuff like that, or down to Glasgow to train, there is more guys. There's more people kicking about doing it. It's just, you know, kind of getting it out there and showing kind of the rest of the country that wrestling is a sport here and it's available.
Do you think that's a consequence of like the rise in MMA in general, and obviously because people are watching MMA, they're then seeing the specific martial arts all being displayed and then taking an interest in them from there on in?
How many people do like jits now? It's insane. There's so many people.
That's certainly where I started training because I was watching all this UFC and like I was interested in the striking, but when I went down to the ground, I had not a clue what was going on. I thought, right, I'll maybe get a better understanding of this.
Totally.
And then I kind of got thrown into the fire pit and then realised what it's actually about. Once you've actually done it, you've got so much respect for the guys that do it, because it's literally insane, that sport. Like, but I don't feel like when it comes to wrestling and jiu-jitsu that there's not enough push, if you know what I mean. There's not enough mainstream media about it, especially over here. Like,
I think you still get the same with that with MMA in general, right? Like the BBC's only just started showing Bellator, and like 5-10 years ago, this would be like the same kind of organizations that would call it human cockfighting and stuff like that, and try and put it down. But I think with time it will continue to grow, right? Especially with the younger generation being more involved in it.
I just really think they're missing the ball, because there's so much money to be made in these sports. Like, the popularity, it's one of your first sports. Wrestling is your first sport. You know, it's basic one-on-one person, body against body, and that's what people kind of want to see, and they'll pay good money to see that. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. I think the difficulty with like jits and wrestling and the grappling side of things is you can put on boxing, you can put on, you know, kickboxing, taekwondo, whatever it is, and you can watch it and go, "Oh, that was a good kick, that was a good punch." But
it's more technical with like the grappling side of it. Yeah,
if you don't understand what's happening, like you can't really appreciate what's going on. Yeah, you're looking at stuff and you're like, "Whoa, they're just rolling around on the floor," and that's why, like, when I first started doing jits, all my pals used to rip the piss out of me, like, "Oh, you're like shagging each other on the floor." You know, and that's the sort of thing that they'd start to talk about, and I'm like, well, you're not actually understanding what's going on. You know, like, I could take you down right now, control you, and you couldn't do fuck all about it.
Yeah.
You know? Like, yeah, you could try punch me. Yeah, you could try, but you're not going to get much force when your elbow's on the floor and I'm here. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen.
Wrestling seems to teach the most people respect, right? Even like the biggest stage, like, you know, McGregor, Khabib, you know.
Well, I'm kind of going back to, like, I only went to a couple of your wrestling classes originally up in. I never went to an SPG one down where we're at now, up at Ali's.
Yeah,
And my first ever wrestling class, I came up and you're like, right, we'll get a warm up, we'll just get a couple of pins on the go and stuff. And I came up against a 17-year-old guy called Jamie. You know who I'm on about?
Jimmy
young
Jr.
Jamie.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I'm in my mid-20s. This guy's 17. He picked me up on my head, picked me up, threw me on my head, and I was like, "Whoa, what the fuck is going on here?"
It was part of you, like, beginner's luck, you know.
But he didn't do anything like fancy. He wasn't overexerting himself.
Just the fundamentals were correct.
Pure, basics was just to a T, you know. And I was just like blown away at that point. Like, I don't think I came to much wrestling after that.
That's it. Wrestling's so demanding of your body. It's so tough. Like, I think a lot of time that people do it, and then like the feeling you have afterwards, you know, of getting absolutely pasted, and you're not even getting punched on anything.
No,
but you're like, you come away feeling like, oh man,
it's the tension within your body and the joints and that. Yeah,
it's so quick and explosive that you end up absolutely knackered. And you know, when things like that happen, like suplexes and stuff like that, it can be sore.
Do you think that's why people maybe get deterred from it? Because we seem to kind of live in a world now where people will put stuff out like things are hard, and that will immediately deter people. Like, oh, it's hard, that I shouldn't do it and stuff like that. Whereas people that persevere with that then end up getting like immense success and whatnot.
Yeah, totally. A lot of people like try, you know, they'll come and try it out. And you know, it's not to say that like that's a harder sport to do than any other sport. Every single sport's difficult in its own right, but like, you could, once you build your fitness up, you can roll in jits for like an hour, hour and a half, and you can be all right because you've got times to rest. Whereas like when you're wrestling, you do have times to rest, but it's just not as much. And if you're wrestling against like guys that are putting you under pressure all the time, you're just, you know.
How long are your rounds and things? Standard things.
So for competition, it's 3 minutes on and 30 seconds rest in between the two periods, and it's just 2 rounds. Right. For that, but you know, like,
is that based on, like, because I've seen a lot of different rule variations with wrestling. Is that based on a pin for the win, or is it a pin for a point? Or
So like, if you're looking at like American style stuff, I don't know too much about that, but that's like folk style wrestling. So the point system on that's completely different. Yeah. And then you've got like freestyle over here, and well, everywhere does freestyle, but that's like kind of the main one that people do. That one's like, if you get a pin, that's it, over completely. If you get a 10-point lead, then you win by basically like a technical, advantage. That's the word. And then it could just be that you go the full distance, but you're up, to 5, and that person's got 3, and you beat them on points. So they're the kind of 3 ways you can win.
Yeah.
So, but you do see like pins do happen, but it's usually when you're at comps, it's usually a technical advantage that kind of gets it. You get into a position like, so for a roll, it's 2 points. So if you gut wrench somebody, or you ankle lace them and you roll them a couple of times, like if you get into that position, you get a takedown. That's like 4 points anyway. Boom, you got your takedown. Cool. Now I'm gonna ankle lace you. I'm gonna roll you 3 times. That's me, got my 10 points. Game over. So a lot of time you see stuff like that happening because people are chain wrestling and linking it together. They're hitting their takedown, then they're getting a position where they can roll the person, and they're rolling them a couple of times. And the thing is, like, I had this happen to me at a competition. It was like one of the first comps I did, and it was I can't remember the guy's name, but the wrestling club is called Ernie Wrestling from Ireland, and he had me like a gut wrench, and I didn't really understand what was going on at that point. I was like very new to the actual sport as a whole, and he just kept tilting me. So I went into my shoulder. He took me back a little bit. I didn't really go too far, but I didn't feel like I wasn't in control. I felt like, all right, I'm gonna try and roll over here and get back onto my knees. He did it a couple of times, and that was it. I got stood up, and I was like, what? Ref took us into the middle, raised his hand. I was like, it was like 10 seconds of the match.
Aye.
And I just got tilted a couple of times. Because he took me onto my shoulder and then back up, that counted as a roll. Uh-huh. So it's not like a full roll, but it still counts on the shoulder, back up onto a point where neither of our shoulders are on the floor, and then back down, back up, back down. And then he racked up his points real quick. So if you go to comp and you get somebody who's inexperienced and not sure,
is that like your jiu-jitsu version of pulling guard, basically? What
what
the guy's just done,
like what's going on here? So there's the point system. It can be a little confusing until you start to understand what's actually happening and why it's happening. Because even pins as well. Sometimes people are like, yeah, but my shoulder wasn't touching the floor. It's like, well, it doesn't matter. You're on your back. You're on your back for longer than 3 seconds. That's you. Yeah. It doesn't matter if your shoulder's not exactly off the floor. If you're this much, you're basically being pinned. If you're on your back flat, just because you lift your shoulder a little bit doesn't mean, if you're turned right over and you're part of your back and your shoulder aren't on the floor, cool. But if you're basically like this and just just lift my shoulder a little bit, doesn't you're still gonna get pinned from there. You're on your back at the end of the day. So
even though MMA's giving wrestling more attention, one of the things that kind of interests me is when there's big wrestlers that are making a name for themselves. The one that comes to mind that's straight in wrestling is Jordan Burroughs in America.
Yeah.
And the question he constantly gets asked is, when are you transitioning to MMA?
Yeah.
Which is kind of is that not taking kind of talent away from that niche in itself? I understand the kind of interest around it because wrestling, yeah.
I really think it's not necessarily the sport. I think it's the money.
Yeah.
Because there's not much money. There's not money in wrestling really. Burroughs has got a deal with Asics, I think, for
who'd heard of Ben Askren before MMA.
Exactly. So these guys, when they've got a talent like that and they're very skilled in that area and they can control people, it's well, now I just need to learn how to strike and learn basic defense and jiu-jitsu, and they can transition across and then keep training, getting better. So I think more than anything, it's a money thing. It's he's done amazingly well for himself through the sport of wrestling.
Yeah.
But it's the guys that aren't as high level. You go to the Olympics and stuff, you're gonna get money for that. Mm-hmm. But the guys who aren't making it to the Olympic teams are still really higher level wrestlers. They're the ones I think that are going to transition across, because it's well, I can go to this, I can use my wrestling. All I need to know now is how to punch somebody, how to elbow somebody, how to knee somebody, kick, and I need to know basic jiu-jitsu. But if you've done wrestling,
it's an amazing base.
It's a great base. Yeah. All you really need to know is
it's a great foundation for wherever you want to take it from there. Yeah.
can you defend submissions? Cool, right? I've learned that. You know, not that you learn everything. But as you go, you get better and better at your submission defense, and then you start learning about submissions
It's a lot.
as well.
It's not even just jiu-jitsu. Like, put a high-class judo guy against an amazing wrestler, and the guy's going to have no success whatsoever, you know, because they've got this low center of gravity with the wrestlers, great
just
bases.
different. Completely different.
Plus, I also think, I'll ask you about this in a wee while, but like, you've got a mental toughness with wrestlers because you've got a lot of weight cutting.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of like tough training programs. It's not just like, oh, turn up and we'll roll for an hour. It's like, you guys are going to be doing 10-minute rounds for the next 3 hours solid. You know, you need to get this sweat out you.
It's not like a weight cut every 3 months. Like wrestlers will like cut weight sometimes like multiple times every 2 weeks and stuff.
I watched a small documentary about weight cutting in America, and it was based on MMA, but they touched on the wrestling, and they're like, these guys keep within like 1 or 2 pounds of their weight.
Yeah.
But they don't realize how hard it is to stay like that. Are you pretty much the same? Do you stay pretty much on weight? Or?
No, I go a bit heavier. I'm cutting down to like 74 now, so I kind of sit like 80 kilos.
Yeah,
and then I'll cut from there, and do a little water cut.
How quick a cut are you talking like?
So I'll kind of cut a few kilos in actual like body fat weight, and then I'll probably get down to like 77, 76, and then the last little bit I'll do water, and usually that's like a week-long process. So I kind of start drinking a little bit more on Monday, increase it again on Tuesday, increase it again on Wednesday, reduce it a little bit on Thursday, nothing on the Friday, and then I'll probably do like a light workout where I'll just go wrap myself up.
Can I just ask you, it might get a bit personal here and forgive me, but like I know you're a diabetic, so how does that work with you, Dougie?
So
like,
that's a whole different ball game as well, mate. So that's one thing I think, like, you know, it's that's a whole story in itself, but you've then got to manage your insulin too. So like normally, I've got 2 insulins that I use. I've got my long acting, which basically runs for like 18 hours, 24 hours. And that's like your base level of insulin that's just in my body all the time, right? And then I've got my blue needle. I've got my grey needle, my blue needle. That's just what I call it. But the Nova Rapid, which is like my fast acting insulin. So that is used when I consume carbohydrates. So if I have a slice of bread, it's 20 grams of carbs, I'll do 2 units. Now that's not to say that's exactly the same amount of units every single diabetic would use, but for me that's what I do. So I do 1 unit of insulin to every 10 grams of carbs. So what I then need to manage basically when I'm starting to wake up is, am I going to have a hypo? And I don't want my bloods being high too, because if I'm super high all the time, my training performance is shit, I feel shit, and it's in the long term detrimental to my health. If I have a hypo, I feel shit, I won't be able to train because I'm having a hypo, and then I'm going to need to consume more calories and more, you know, carbs to, you know, counteract that situation. So then I'm in this position where I need to kind of find that mid-range where, you know, my bloods are okay, they're not too high, they're not too low. They say normally between like 4 and 7, but for me personally, I'd go between like 4 and 10. I'm happy with any bloods between there, because like it's not too high that it's like, you know, gonna have a negative effect. But you know, if I'm going to do a hard session, I'm going to do an hour and a half wrestling, and I'm like 4, and I've not had carbohydrates in that before, I'm probably going to have a hypo mid-session. Yeah. So I'd rather be a little bit higher, you know. So then you've got to think about how much insulin you're taking as a whole. So I usually reduce my long-acting insulin so that my bloods are not kind of constantly getting lowered throughout the day. So they'll run a little bit higher, and then I can manage it with my Nova Rapid. But you then got to think about how much carbs you're eating, and if I'm eating a certain amount of carbs, I then need to reduce the amount of insulin I'm having, depending on what kind of session I'm doing. So if I'm going to, again, go do a hard wrestling session, and I've had 60 grams of carbs, what I'd probably normally do is knock off 2 units, because I know I'm going to go into that, and my bloods are going to get reduced anyway, because my heart rate's up. You know, I'm working really, really hard, burning loads of calories, sweating like fuck. So I know that I'm going to probably, by the end of that session, be lower anyway. So if I knock off a couple of units of insulin, it kind of reduces my risk of you know, having a hypo. But this, like, I've done this over, like, when I first started training, and training for long periods of time, and back when, like, me, Martin, Kev, and Aiden, Ginge would kick about from, like, club to club when we were training at the boxing club, and then go into focus for our jits, and then going wherever else for, through to Inverness for MMA and stuff, and we'd be doing these, like, 2, 3, 4 hour sessions. Like, I'd be having hypos all the time, because, like, at that point, I didn't have any clue. I had no base to go from, because all I'd ever done is football, and they were only hour-long sessions, Yeah. So, like, an hour-long session, running around, yeah, it's tough on your body. Yes, it's going to, have an effect on my bloods, but it was nothing compared to what I was doing with training. So, like, I kind of had to figure that out as I went. And, I've had help from, diabetic nurses and stuff like that, but it's difficult, someone telling you to do something. You can get an idea, but you've got to figure it out for yourself.
Absolutely.
It depends, if I'm using 1 unit to every 10 grams of carbs, like, that's me. But what if somebody else is using 2 units to every 10 grams? Or maybe they're using half a unit to every 10 grams. Like, it's going to be completely different. You just got to kind of figure it out for yourself. But going back, in terms of weight cutting, it's basically try and keep myself in that range, so I'm not going high or going low, and then make sure that my performance is still high, and then I'm kind of focusing my carbohydrates in terms of what I'm eating through the day around my sessions, so that I'm fueled for my session, but my bloods are going to be okay as well. So it can become a bit of a nightmare. When I'm actually doing the water cut, that's completely horrendous, because I'm kind of not
I can
taking...
imagine, like, a day being a diabetic with no water is, like, fucking relentless. Like.
I mean, for anybody, it's brutal, but yeah, it's dude, it's not fun. But at that point, it's like, well, I'm only doing it for a short amount of time. Yeah. Like, that last day, so I cut out my carbohydrates as well, and that's to make sure that I'm not retaining more water. So then that becomes a real balance. And the last cut I did at the British Championships last year for wrestling, like, my bloods were high as fuck on the Friday, because I was waiting to weigh in. Now, I made weight fine, but that day I wasn't consuming any carbs, I wasn't eating anything, I wasn't drinking anything. It was a very, like, long day of just nothing. But I've then still got to manage, like, I don't want to have a hypo, because if I have a hypo, I need to eat, and then that's going to affect my weight. And then I also don't want to go too high, because then I just feel like shit. I almost feel when you go, like, when I get high blood sugar, it's really, really high, I just cramp all up my body, and I get this really sick feeling. Like I'm going to spew. I'm not going to spew, but I just feel horrendous. Get a very metallic taste in my mouth. It's just not fun. Dry mouth. And you've got a dry mouth anyway from not having any water. Yeah, but at that point, it's a fucking nightmare. So trying to figure out, like, how to make sure my bloods are in line as well as hitting weight can be a bit of a nightmare. But I think you just got to try, it's kind of...
Certainly committed to the cause.
Yeah.
Is that something you would like to see go from all combat sports, is the weight cutting? I mean, I know, as we were just talking about there, it doesn't seem as... I don't want to, like, play it down or anything. It doesn't seem as bad as, like, when people cut weight, like, 25 pounds of that in, like, MMA and stuff, which is, like, crazy. But it does seem like it just has, like, a negative effect, rather than maybe someone coming in, seeing what people fight at a healthy weight, so it takes all this kind of...
Guys never look good once they've done a water cut. Like, guys look that. Like, look at the Conor McGregor.
That's the one that always sticks in my mind.
His
he
face
looks like
always,
he's on,
like, sucked
heroin,
in.
man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's not good.
But you see him at 45 and 70, it's a complete different person.
Yeah.
It's not the same person.
It's mad. I think, like, boxing has loads of different weights.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. Because, like, you look at wrestling, right? You've got 57, 65, 74, 86, 97, and it's like plus 120.
Yeah.
That's not a lot.
Mad. Yeah. So you've got to go, like, I sit normally around about 80 kilos. Like, if there was an 80 kilo bracket, sometimes there's a 79 kilo bracket, but that's not like Olympics or Commonwealths. You can't compete at that. That's just like some competitions will put that on. That's like an ideal weight. I'd love to be competing at that weight all the time. That'd be perfect for me. But you've got that big jump. It's like 10, 12 kilos in between each one.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like jiu-jitsu where you can be the light guy in your bracket, but because you're the light guy, you're the flexible guy, and you want to be the heaviest guy in your bracket.
Well, that's what the whole weight cutting thing is people trying to get an advantage by
down to like grams and things like that.
I think if people like you get that, like you're just saying, you get these guys that are coming in, they're super heavy, and they're trying to get to be the heaviest weight heaviest in their bracket, and like they're cutting stupid amounts of weight to make that. So then you're walking in, like, in your bracket, you're expecting, most guys in, like, 74, they're not going to be that tall. And if they are tall, they're usually a lot slimmer and longer. Yeah. But then you walk in and you look at the guy, and you're like, oh, 6'5", and he's massive. And you're like, whoa, he's big, And it's not to say, like, that's going to affect the performance in your match. It's just, like, you get these guys who are huge, cutting down to be the heaviest one in the lighter bracket, rather than everyone just going, right, well, I kind of normally sit at this weight, this is my natural weight, and having a few more weight brackets. Maybe not cutting weights out altogether, but having more weight brackets available for people competing.
Because the argument is they always say boxing has too many weights, but I don't think it's necessarily the way. I think boxing has too many belts.
Yeah,
like we're always talking about who's the champion, and there's like, oh well, WBC, WBA, all this kind of stuff. Whereas I think if it's something reasonable, 5 to 10 pounds, I don't think that's too much of a jump. Probably more closer to 5 than 10.
Yeah.
But like for example, the UFC, it's like what, 45, 55, 70, 85, 205, and then 265.
It's a huge gap between, especially when you're talking guys are cutting down and cutting just like half a kilo, and that's them, and they're top. As you're saying, 120 kilo guy. If you're going in against a 120 kilo guy and you're sitting at 90 odd, and as you're saying, with a guy that's like 6'5", surely your handles are placed differently when you're trying to lift up a guy that's twice the size of you, compared to somebody who is your size. You're not going to be able to ruffle in as much. His head position is going to be up here, while you're going to be going into his chest. There's dynamics like that.
Yeah, it depends who when you're looking at the guy across from you, like if they're a lot taller, maybe it's going to be a little bit easier to get on his hips. If they're smaller, maybe it's going to be harder. Maybe you're going to have to focus on trying to lift them up. But you don't really know until you're in it. But it can have an effect on the match, because you then have to figure out, every single person's different. It's like a chess match, and everybody's got a different strategy. And that person's body type, depending on how tall they are, if they're stocky or they're slim, that will have a slight effect on, if somebody's got really, really long arms and they've got these levers and they can just push you away, that's going to be harder for you to get in, so then you've got to work harder. But it's like figuring that out as you're doing it. It's that human chess match.
Yeah, and obviously, like, there's an advantage it comes with if someone can do it, like, healthy, which I suppose that they're going to give up some of that anyway from doing that. But the one story that always kind of comes back to me is Darren Till fought at UFC London, the last one. I know there's one in March this year, but the last one they had in like 2019 or that.
Yeah.
And he was cutting all the way down to 170.
Yeah.
So I think his walking around weight's 210 pounds, which is crazy.
He's a big dude, like,
and I think he went blind the day before the fight because he was trying to force this water out of his body, and obviously he went on to get brutally knocked out. And obviously Masvidal's a savage, so it could have happened anyway. But you've got to think that can't help with taking head trauma or something like that the next day.
I can't see how, like, especially if these guys are starting to cut like 3 months beforehand, then maybe, but a lot of these guys are walking about until 4 weeks before, and then they start it,
and they start cutting,
and then it's like that's not possible. Physically, humanly, what's that doing to your liver? What's that doing to your heart?
Yeah, your brain, your organs.
That's it. Totally. It's just it's more detrimental to your health than it is beneficial. But like at that point, when you're at that level, I don't think like guys will really give a shit, because they're like, well, I'm getting in, I'm going to get 60 grand, 70 grand, whatever it is, for the fight. So they're like, I need to get in. That's my paycheck. But like, especially for people who are, competing at a more like kind of amateur level, semi-pro, that are, they're doing it for enjoyment because they're like doing it, but they're not getting paid mad money for it. I think that, there should be some kind of difference in terms of weight cutting and stuff.
I watched an interview with John Kavanagh many years ago, and it was kind of related to the weight cutting, but he was also saying as well, if you're not making good enough money, you shouldn't be doing the sport in 4-ounce gloves. I know like the glove kind of size might be a minuscule thing from time to time, because I think it's 4 and is it 8 ounces that other organizations use. But he was like saying like if it's the 4-ounce gloves where it's basically the padding's designed for knockouts really, rather than to like protect people's hands at that point, that you should be getting paid like a substantial amount of money to like live, you know, rather than just do it for like £1,000 or whatever.
I do believe that, like, obviously MMA is your pinnacle. I believe that because it's a combination of everything, they should be paid more than boxers.
Yeah,
you know,
totally. Yeah.
If MMA had been around 60 years ago,
it's still a young sport, isn't it?
It's
So
seen way bigger than boxing these days. Like,
but even though it's a young sport, the martial arts that are involved in the sport have been around for. You know, if we're talking about wrestling, we're talking about centuries ago in the original Olympics and so on.
Do you have any involvement with like the Olympic team or anything like that?
Not the Olympic team. I'm in the Scottish squad, so I train with them for wrestling. And we go down to England and that for the GB sessions as well. So we get invited to them to go and train, which is good. But in terms of the Olympic team and that, no. I don't know. I've not seen any wrestlers from the UK go to the Olympics. Not that I've seen anyway. Commonwealth, but Olympics I've not seen. But again, that could change. There's a lot of
I don't really follow much of Commonwealth. Is that kind of Commonwealths? I suppose would be dominated by Canadians and things. Is it?
From like it's more. I think like. I'm trying to think now.
But even like countries like Australia probably catch up eventually and stuff like that as well.
Aussies, you got like a lot of the Caribbean countries, but like I'm trying to think what's in the Commonwealth.
I'm trying to think now as well.
There's not much left these days.
Laughs in British.
Exactly. I'm trying to think. Yeah, there's so like Nico.
Do you want to speak a bit about Nico? Because I've got him down here. Like,
go on. Yeah,
he top 5 in the world for his weight.
For 74 kilograms. Yeah. So he's a really high level wrestler, and it's mad that he's in Scotland.
Yeah.
Like, North of Scotland.
Yeah.
He's here, and he's like so that's a guy you get to train with him, and just watch the way he moves. It's just insane. He flows with his wrestling, and he's just so
He's not originally from Britain, is he?
No, so he's Moldovan. So there's a lot of Moldovans over here as well that are wrestling. So he was originally from Moldova, and then he went over to I think it was Romania he went to for a little bit, and he was competing with them, and then to Germany, and then he's come over here and changed his nationality for competing. So he's competing for.
He does a lot with like the kids and things like that.
He's so big on wrestling as a whole, as a sport, just being integrated into your life. When you chat to him about wrestling, he's so passionate about it. It's mad. He's just like going and training with him, just being around him in terms of wrestling. It's mad. It's mad to see what he does on a day-to-day basis with his like training and stuff, watching him training, and then also just seeing what he's trying to give back to the community too. So
one thing we brought up with Kev is that the younger generation coming through, this can only be a good thing for them, especially in a world where we have social media and so many luxuries around us at all times. I think respect can be lost, and you do see that sometimes like on the streets, for lack of a better term, whereas obviously getting someone involved in something like martial arts and wrestling and whatnot, you're going to have that humility and respect and all that's kind of drilled into you, like you said, become part of your life, right?
Yeah, totally. Like having when you step on the mat and somebody fucks you up, like you do, because you could look at somebody and think, I'd smash that guy, and then you walk up to him and
our point in motion is Shay, young Shay.
Look at Shay. Like Shay's a guy you walk past in the street, like no disrespect to Shay, but you look at him and you go, I'd smash him, and he would fuck you up. You know what I mean? Like because he's just so technically, he's got a mind for it.
Absolutely,
You watch him when he's coaching. You watch him when I haven't rolled with him or anything for quite a while now, but like you watch him and he's mad. He's so into it,
It's like an encyclopedia of jiu.
Totally,
yeah.
Well, look how well he's done. You know what I mean? Like.
Well, what was that? That is gi world champion now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kev said something. Who would have thought a world champion would have came from Findhorn or
Yeah,
something?
exactly. Like, just think about that, like
Crazy.
Findhorn, and
Yeah.
like, which is like basically nowhere. You know what I mean? Middle of nowhere.
And to think, like, I'm not going to name any names, but there were some people who just thought he was flexible.
Yeah. Some people like, you know, and I mean that's one frustration for me. I used to try and like pass his guard and stuff, or like when I was wrestling with him, like, you know, hit a double leg or something, and then boom, his leg would be there, and I'd be like, you shouldn't be able to do that. But he's a flexible dude, and you know that's an attribute that's you know, helps him with his jiu-jitsu too. But you know, it's his passion for it, and his mind set towards it as well. So you know, you can't take that away. That's the key thing to it there.
So there's definitely humility is left at the door.
Yeah.
In these kind of places, like
I think that's probably like someone that's not involved in training, hasn't met you and stuff like that, would probably assume because you're involved in combat sports, like, oh, they must be like really intense and like,
Do you know
who
what?
can I slam in the
It's
back?
the
Do
opposite,
you know what I mean? It is though,
it
right?
is.
I remember the first time I was like, I've never met such a bunch of like geeks and fucking like nerds in all my fucking life.
Totally.
Like,
It is. You go in like, and you look at some of the guys there, and you look around and you're like, fuck, he looks scary.
yeah.
You start chatting to him.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy's soft.
Yeah.
Like, I think the only thing is when people know that you do a combat sport, and they
To
come up to you
challenge you.
and they're like, sometimes, like, I've never had it like
Yeah.
in my kind of adult life. When I was younger, I had it in school. Like, some folk would be like, "Oh, come on, then, let's have a wrestle," and I'm like, why? Like, come down training on Monday night, like, sure, like,
Yeah.
but
Like, no, all these
Nah.
kids in the middle of the field.
it's like when I did MMA more, like, I'd be out like, you know, in Joanna's.
Yeah.
Like, and, and I'd be kicking about, right, and like some boys would come up to me and be like, "Here, this boys want to fight with me. Will you fighting for me? Fucking fighting for you." Like, no,
Not a professional
like,
hitman.
like, fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not getting involved in street shit. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm going to do it as a sport because I enjoy doing it. Doesn't mean I want to fight everybody. But that's sometimes that's the only issue with doing combat sports.
There's like a big ego, especially in like
kind of
drinking
touched on it with
culture.
Kev, didn't
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
It says, don't know if you've maybe experienced with wrestling. Do you ever get guys that maybe turn up to wrestling class and like, oh, I've wrestled for 3 years, and then you get on the mat with them and you're like, no, you fucking haven't, mate.
Anyone threatened to dragon death kick you?
yeah, all that kind of stuff. Like,
You get guys. You get
Those are the
like
guys that are watching those legit as fuck videos on YouTube, like the pressure points and all
that.
that.
What's that called? It's like that. Sistema.
Yeah.
Fucking-
Folds like dog.
it is. You do get folk come out, and I mean, you probably get this more in like MMA clubs and that. They'll come in and be like, "I just want to fucking fight."
Yeah.
How many training sessions you done?
When
That's
do I
my
get
first
3-piece suit?
Yeah, exactly. And you're just like, dude, like, you obviously, I get you're passionate about it, you want to do it, but like, you're not understanding. Like, you're gonna need at least a fucking year's training, solid training,
Yeah.
before you even think about jumping in. Like, because it's not just something you can go and jump into. I mean, there was a post about this. What was it? There was a Scottish show, and there was a guy, it was a massive mismatch. They basically pulled a guy like out of a club that's been training for a couple of months. And there's a guy that's been training for years.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it was just a complete, like, I didn't watch the fight or anything like that, but from what I've read, it's like a massive mismatch in terms of opponents. And like, you can't jump into this sport, like, in terms of like MMA and that. You can't jump into that and just jump in. Same with boxing, same with any striking sport, but you just can't jump into these combat sports and not have done anything, not trained. You need to go in and be. I think that's one reason that a lot of people don't start doing these sports is because, like, you go in and you realize, oh, I'm like a tadpole in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that guy is like a megalodon. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, people don't like knowing that they can't look after themselves.
They
I think a lot of people
go from being the big fish in a small pond to the small fish in a big
pond,
pond in the step of by stepping over a threshold of a door, you know.
Yeah, and I think with people like you're saying when they're out, like I've had like 3 street fights, like someone in the head when they weren't looking and stuff. But
Exactly.
it's people like that. I think it's like a humility thing. They don't want to be humbled, or they don't like they have to always have their ego up here, and they can't ever let that drop.
Yeah.
Like I've lost my train of thought on this, but there was Scott Ramsey I had on a few months ago, and he was talking about he was doing a gig, right, and some guy had asked for something, they got talking to him outside or whatever, and somehow martial arts came into the conversation, and Scott was mentioning that he like trains at SBG and that, and this guy was like, yeah. He was like, I've done that before and that, but he was like, I could do this to you, I could, and knock you out, but I'm not. I'll let you drive home. But these are the kind of people that are like going about and saying, and they never have to like prove it, so they can just continue talking.
Exactly. It's just being able to talk absolute shit. Like I've had guys, right? See when people see these, right? I've had colliers, and I basically just got them from like the first 2-3 years of training from getting absolutely pummeled by Martin, Kev, Aiden, Jins, all the guys, and getting my ears were just going out all the time, and I had, I've got these colliers. And everywhere I go, doesn't matter what country I'm in, somebody will spot it and go, "Oh, do you do this? Do you do jiu-jitsu?" And it starts a conversation, which is great when you meet other people who've actually done the martial arts, and you get to meet them, and then you get chatting. But some folk come up to you and go, "Oh, you got colliers? You fight, do you?" And then they'll tell you a story of how like they've knocked out 4 boys.
Yeah. All at the same time.
See this tiny bit of collier here that I've got, that little bit there. So this boy saw it and he was like, "No, I'm not fighting you. You're gonna be solid." Like, shut up. Like, it's sometimes that's.
I remember asking you about your colliers the first time I spotted them, and I was like, "What's it like?" And you're like, "I could just have to wear different headphones. That's all."
That's cool. People go to me all the time. "Oh, can you still hear?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like my hearing's fine. It's just I can't put earphones in. So like everyone's talking about, "Oh, what set of headphones should I get? Should I get the Apple AirPods? Should I get Dre Beats?" I'm like, well, I can't fucking wear it. I have to have like headphones on, or it's just not gonna work because they just don't sit.
Like,
and that's probably the only downfall to it.
Yeah.
The good thing is like they're absolutely solid, so it doesn't really hurt when people like ping you and that. Like, but that doesn't really happen. Probably my mum. Bang. That's what I mean. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
and as you say, it's like a talking point. Somebody who's possibly training will come up and like, "Oh, training,"
Yeah. I've spoke to more people because of these than any other like physical attribute.
Yeah.
They will come over and like, "Oh, like I like I don't know, your legs are this, oh, your ears." Everyone comes up for the ears. Like, and that just starts a combo.
I've seen Dougie's legs, but he's like,
back in the day.
Yeah, well, obviously, like
that used to be the thing at training. Everyone used to say that. Oh man.
So do you want to touch a wee bit on your MMA fight?
Yeah.
What made you want to compete in MMA? Because obviously you said you were settled in the wrestling. You were training jits and everything as well.
Initially, I just kind of like, so I'd started doing Thai boxing, and I'd been watching loads of like UFC stuff. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I want to try this. And all my family are like, "Why don't you just go and do cycling or something?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I was like, "Nah, I want to do this. This is something I want to go and do."
You've always been like fitness though, because you like when I remember before you had the gym and things, you worked at Ali's.
Yeah.
And you were doing your college stuff as well. What is it you done at college again?
So I was doing applied science, so I could go and do nutrition, and then I was doing the course, and it was just all environmental science. Like, it was nothing to do with like chemistry or I'm not doing this anymore. So I packed that in, and I just went and I've done a strength and conditioning course instead. So I've got like my level 3 for PT, and I've got my.
Because you were doing all this at the same time as like training as well, so it kind of goes hand in hand. Like
it does, yeah. It's like anything I go away and learn for like work, I can use it for myself too. So it's good. It's good getting to kind of go away and learn things and then apply them myself and actually use them training principles or whatever else, or nutrition kind of things to benefit myself with training.
It's kind of amazing when you think of like. Well, I think of you guys as like the original Misfits, and then you think you've got Kev, who's sports massage now. You've got yourself, nutrition and fitness. Martin's taken his levels of coaching to like unreal levels.
Just got his black belt as well, right?
Just got his black belt as well, but like he's constantly reading, linking us to podcasts about the mind and things like that. So you've all got kind of like your base strengths. So there is a complete badass of an MMA fighter in there somewhere between all of you. Is like,
well, you could tell that when you jumped halfway across the case to switch kick him in the face.
So like, who's it? Thomas.
Petchko. There we go.
He was a big dude. Like,
so I remember looking at I was taking my picture, right? The one you have to send in to On Top at the time. I took my picture and like sent it in, and the poster came out, and I was looking at this guy's chest and his like shoulder. I was like, "Fuck, he is big, man." And like when I actually seen him standing across from me, I was still like, "Fucking hell, he's big." Like he's a big dude.
He was Immortals.
Immortals, yeah,
Aberdeen,
in Aberdeen. So, I kind of like that. I've been training for that for like I was gonna have an MMA fight, and then I was training and got fucking sparked out in training. And had a concussion, so I pulled out of that one. And then after that, ended up fighting On Top. That was my first one. But I'd done a few like interclubs and stuff like that beforehand.
Did you ever do Smart or anything like that?
I never did Smart because I'd done. I can't remember what the reason was. I'd done boxing or something like that, or too many interclubs or whatever it was, so I couldn't actually go and do it.
Yeah.
Or at the time frame I'd been training for. So like I went into my first fight with like 3.5 years training. You know.
Because you were 20 at the time, I believe.
20, yeah. So yeah, like at that point I'd been training for quite a while. So I couldn't go and do Smart. So like when I did my first actual fight, I'd already done I'd done an exhibition with Ginge, exhibition with Cam Cheng from Inverness.
Yeah, it's
him
with Ross Houston. He's part of that
team
in Inverness. Yeah.
And I'd done an interclub at the Grip House and then one at the Aberdeen Combat Centre as well. So the one I did at Aberdeen Combat Centre I would have been like 16, 17. And then the Grip House one I did just a couple of months before I had my fight, my first fight. So
how was it leading, like day of the fight? How was because I can't even get into the mind frame of what you guys are like
do you know what?
experiencing.
Everyone's like, I think everyone's a bit different. I at the time, right, I was sitting like back stage waiting to go on, just like sitting listening to like Ben Howard. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really like. I was kind of getting into that mindset. But I think everyone's got their own little way of doing it, and like for me, I was just kind of like a bit more silent. And
I think I've watched you get the releases of the UFC. They'll follow them about for
embedded and stuff like that.
Embedded and all that. I remember watching one, and it was like Diego Sanchez like just pumping himself up before a fight, and there's like Rage Against the Machine playing, and he's like hitting walls.
Oh my god!
And stuff.
Did you see him with that trainer that he just left? There's a bit where he's hanging upside down, and the trainer's like punching him in the head and stuff like that.
Yeah,
crazy.
And this is all like just before a fight and stuff, and it's like I get that you need to get pumped up and that, but personally, if I would never do it, but I can feel myself like wanting to be level-headed at this point.
Totally.
Thinking of your own game plan, not thinking about, oh shit, what's this guy going to do to me?
Yeah. Panic causes mistakes and all that.
Do you study your opponent before this? Do you get like info or that?
So all I knew that he'd had is a boxing match, and he hadn't had any fights either. So I watched some of his boxing online, but like I wasn't really too fussed. Like Martin and Kev, kind of Ginge, Aiden. When I was talking to these guys on the lead up, it's kind of like don't worry about that. You focus on what you're doing, because what you're going to do is the most important part. Like so, just focus on your own training, keep working hard, and at that point like doing rounds every week. 5-5s with fucking Aiden, Houston, Ginge, Kev. Martin would jump in as well at that point, and like that fight compared to sparring them was fuck all.
Yeah,
honestly,
I've watched these guys do 5-5s, and it's
I've got
that's like championship kind of.
So you've got 5-minute rounds, and then you're talking like Dougie, Aiden, Ross, Houston, Martin, all.
It's just like the Shark Tank thing. There's a new guy every round.
30 seconds break, next guy in. And you probably get like solid 25 minutes, half an hour at that.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Different opponent.
Yeah.
30 seconds breaking.
Yeah.
between, like.
And it's not like running on a treadmill.
And
It's
not
a
like
different level kind
it's
of
not
intensity.
like you're just rolling in that as well. You know, you're wall wrestling. You're getting punches thrown at you.
That's the thing. It's a
who sparked you out in training?
Oh, Hayden, man, fucking Hayden. Yeah. So he would like basically what happened. We were sparring middle of the mat, and he threw a kick, and like I didn't get very far down. I started to shoot in, and then his shin and my face, and then I was just on deck. I was gone. So
because I remember the training up at Ali. It's not like, I'm not saying it's not intense at SBG, but I remember it getting fucking intense up there. Like I remember, was it David got his jaw broken by a roundhouse from Bradley?
Yeah, Dave. What's his last name?
McCabe. David
Okay,
McCabe.
yeah. So that was like a sparring session one Saturday, and like Brad had threw like a spinning heel kick, or spinning push kick or something like that, and he ended up clipping him. I think at that point in time, like a lot of guys in the team were competing. Yeah. Like at the minute, like I don't know who's competing in MMA, but there's more.
It's a lot of jits based.
It's a lot of jits based stuff. So like at that point, everyone was competing, and you're looking to push your teammates on and make them better, and by doing that, you've got to put them in positions where they're gonna feel shit. Like, and you'd rather that in a training session. Having one of your teammates over the top of you pulling the power a little bit, but still hitting you. Yeah. Rather than being stuck there in the middle of a fight and the guy actually raining bombs.
To an extent, it's got to be like a simulation of the real thing, right? Yeah.
So the more and more you put your teammates in shit positions, the better they're gonna get, and the better you're gonna get too. So, like at that point, I think because so many people were competing, the intensity was there because everyone was trying to get in the zone of like, right, I need to work hard here, I need to work smart, and I need to. I'm trying to better my game. So at that point, like stuff like that would happen because people were, all aiming to compete.
Yeah, a lot of black eyes and a lot of busted noses. Yeah, things like that.
I remember putting a post up on Facebook. It was my gum shield, and not on Facebook, on Instagram. My gum shield is just covered in blood. There's blood in it. Like just like I did like 5-5s with Ross and Aiden. That Friday was only the three of us, and it was like 5-5s with them two, and then. Like if I was stayed in the middle, the next person would then jump in and start their 5-5s with the other person. So really, you're going for like an hour and a half, solid almost, just scrapping, and you know what I mean. Like it gets intense. Yeah, you're both knackered, and you're trying to put the pressure again on that other person. So you're helping them, so that when they go into that fight, they're gonna find it a lot easier.
And you're talking like 3 or 4 nights a week for 5, 6, 7 weeks, it's not just like, right, you do it once or twice and then you're ready,
Exactly.
So like, you dominated your fight. You absolutely fucking dominated that.
I felt really, like, in that fight, I felt really, really comfortable with my wrestling. And that's what kind of got me more into, like, right, I'm going to go try wrestling as a whole now because, like, everything that I did good in that fight was off my wrestling. So, like, I took the guys back in the first round and couldn't finish them because my fucking, like, I couldn't keep a grip. My forearms were so tight. Like, they were, like, cramping up just with, like, the adrenaline and everything, like, and I just couldn't keep a grip and actually get my arm in. But that was led off a switch kick into a takedown.
The switch kick was legendary. It came from halfway across
the worst part about it was, right, is, like, I didn't even, like, it wasn't like I caught him with, like, my whole foot. It was, like, the kind of front part of my foot there. So, like, my toes and a little bit. I just kind of, like, slapped him in the face with it. It wasn't a full, like, clash. It was just a little slap.
Because before the fight starts, the commentators kind of put it across as, like, it's a wrestler versus a striker. And then, like, that's, like, one of the first actions that happens in the fight. And it was, like... And, like, even, like, the fence we were pulling on him and that, you could kind of tell that he was, like, oh... I wasn't expecting this. I was kind of expecting shots straight away, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's it. Like, but beforehand, like, what I'd been working on was that, and that's the kind of things that Martin, Kev, Jin Jaden would be talking to me about before,
Who was in your corner? Was it Martin?
Kev and Ginge were in my corner for that. Again, just, like, you can hear it in the video, but like calling out, things like, he doesn't fucking like your power, Doug, like, and stuff like that. Just, and you can hear that, and like in your head you're thinking, sweet, like, I'm not the only one seeing this, sort of thing. Like when you're doing it, the takedowns though, that for me was like, that was kind of the best. I was really, really happy with that performance with the takedowns, because everything just led off them. It was high crotches or doubles, and then there was one of them was like a trip on his back. Had double unders, and I took him down. That was like right across the cage. It was like third round or something like that.
The wrestling base in that match is just unreal.
I was really buzzing with that.
Dude, it's like, I've like watched a lot of different interviews with different MMA guys, and like all different, but see, like once you've won that, are you like relieved to say like, oh thank God that's over, or is it like, right, on the next one, what's next?
There must be like a sense of massive euphoria, right? Because it's a massive accomplishment.
Like at that point, like I had like all my pals there, my mum, my dad, like everybody's there. So
absolutely buzzing with your family and that.
Like,
there, like,
I was in, like,
was Aiden not on the same card that night?
He was on the same card.
And they both got wins, didn't they?
As well, so that was just a magic night all around. So there's a fuckload of people there from Elgin, like so many.
Yeah,
people.
you can hear them as well, right?
The bus down was a bit unreal, like.
But see the picture.
Allegedly.
The picture afterwards, there was like in one of the squash courts where we were, like where the changing room was.
Aye.
We had everyone in Elgin from there. There's a massive photo of all of them. Like, and it was just such a huge crowd, and like mine and Aiden's fights were, I think, probably the loudest the crowd got the whole night, because both sides were shouting, like the whole fight, like even in the intervals and stuff when you're wrestling, like everyone was just screaming. It was mad.
I think it helps being like a small knit town for that kind of
remote,
thing.
It's more closely knit.
You're not going to get that in like Glasgow or Aberdeen. You're just going to get your teammates. And
even for like when Aiden fights in Cage Warriors in London, and when Ross fought in Cage Warriors at Wales and that, you could hear people like in their numbers coming down and stuff.
Absolutely, like you'll always get a following, because especially your teammates. I don't know. I think Kev's been to just about every one of Aiden's fights. I don't think there's much he's missed, but. You've got that closeness, you've got that bond, you want to see it all the way through. You don't want to do that 8 weeks of training with someone and then send them off on a plane and it's like, I should be here,
exactly. It's good. Well, that's it. Like, you're training with everybody so much. You do this. It's a big family when you're especially when you're in camp, because you're seeing people like more than you see like your pals, your partner, your mum, your dad, whatever else you've seen.
I suppose especially for yourself, you were working at the gym all day and then literally going next door into the big.
So I'd like basically be through the gym. I'd be just finishing with a client, and then like I'd have my gear through there, and I'd just like be talking to my client at the end of the session, get changed, and they're like, "Oh, what are you waiting to do now?" I'm like, "I'm gonna go through there and get battered." And then you'd go through, and it'd be Thai boxing or MMA or jits, wrestling, whatever it was, and you'd be straight through, and you'd be training. I'd finish at maybe like 6 or whatever else, and be training all the way through. And sometimes if I had a later night where it was like I'd be working till 8, I'd then again, even if it was just half an hour left of the class, just jump on the mat, finish the class, and then roll at the end for a little like half an hour. So you're just constantly training, and guys are just there every night of the week. So yeah, you meet, you're with these people like all the time that you're training with. So
During the fight, your opponent tried to heel hook you a few times.
Yeah, cheeky fuck.
They bring up that that's illegal. Were you aware of that at the time when you were fighting him? But I suppose you just kind of had to focus on.
I was just thinking. So at that point, right, Kev, Aiden, Martin, Ginge, everyone at training was doing heel hooks. Like we were just like, even though we were not allowed, we were still using it in training. So because that was happening to me all the time, I was like at that point quite good at defending it, and it wasn't really an issue. So he put it on, and I was like, "Oh, okay, you're gonna be a dirty little fuck, are you? That's illegal."
Yeah.
Like, and I just kind of sat through, defended it like I normally would, and then I think I took his back.
They train They train absolutely everything at the gym. Though it's not like I remember Martin saying to us like, can't do wrist locks until I think it was brown belt or something like that. Martin will be the first one to put you into a wrist lock. He doesn't give a shit. Like Estima locks and things like these totally. Fancy locks, and he's like still train it. You know, it's good.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
it's good. What's he said? Good muscle memory, repetitiveness, and things like that. But
because stuff like heel hooks will absolutely shrek your leg, right? Like that'll put you out for a long time.
Kev kind of explained the mechanics of it a little bit. What is actually happening
tearing it apart,
twisting that ankle and your knee actually twisting, and it's even just thinking about it's nasty.
Yeah,
I literally so the day after my fight, my ankle was like swollen.
Oh, so it did have some sort of effect.
It did have a bit of effect, because it was on tight, but I knew that I could escape it, so I was just like, I'm not gonna like stop the fight, It's just gonna be a DQ in it, so I was like, fuck that.
Did you get any explanation why the ref didn't like notice it? Because it
No
it was
idea.
multiple times that it happened. Like
I think at that point it was desperation for him.
Yeah.
Because I was just at that third round I was just smothering him.
Yeah.
And I think he was just like, oh, I don't want any of this anymore. Let's just heel hook him.
Yeah.
If I snap his knee, I snap his knee. Like,
a draw is not a loss.
Not a loss. Like, exactly. But yeah, I just was like, because I was thinking about it. I remember it happened. I was like, you can't fucking do that. Like, obviously, if you're actually fighting with someone, it doesn't really matter. That's why you train it in the gym.
But you've both signed the thing under specific rules, right?
So I was thinking in my head, like, you can't do that. But I just defended it and cracked on. Like, what? Like, yeah. I knew at that point. I knew I was winning the fight clearly. Yeah. So I was like, even if there is a little bit of an injury from at that point, it didn't feel sore. It was only the next day, like, felt a little bit sore, and then it was kind of like tender in certain positions. Mainly like if I'd kind of sat on my side, like when you're doing like stand ups and jits.
Yep.
If I'd kind of had my foot on my side, it was really painful. But a couple of months later, it was fine. Like it's not ever given me any issues after.
I seen Kev speaking to you in between rounds. Could you remember what you said to you?
Oh.
Because Kev's a guy that speaks with like a lot of conviction behind what he says and
he's
stuff
a deep
like
guy,
that.
Very interesting guy.
I can't really remember specifically, but I kind of just remember like them shouting in between, like he doesn't want this, you're in control, you're that sort of stuff.
That's the kind of stuff you want to hear, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but the whole kind of sentiment when Kev's in the corner from the fight it's just everything was positive. There was never a point where he's like, oh, that was shit. Like,
I notice it's like I've heard Kevin in the corner of a lot of Aiden fights. It's never too technical. It's always like put that leg there, or it's never like trying to relay a whole load of information. It's just something very simple.
Something little
changing the system.
There's only a certain amount of information someone's going to be able to take in, especially in that situation.
I've heard Shay coach guys, and Shay's fantastic, but Shay is like, put this over here for that reason, and then get the arm around the back, and it's like, whereas Kev will simplify it a lot more.
Yeah.
Both great coaches, they're just different styles completely,
Well, that was like one of the things that kind of took me back when we were speaking to him here is because Kev breaks everything down, whatever it is he's talking about in life, so tactically and analytically. Yeah, that it was so gripping. Like when he would finish saying what he was saying, I was kind of like, "Fuck, what am I meant to ask next?" You know what I mean? Like, so like, do you have a favorite sandwich or something, or like?
But I'm like that when I just went chatting to him in the gym and that. He's one of the guys you can chat to, and you can be like, oh, I've got this problem, and he'll give you some form of like breakdown to it that you can kind of go, oh, actually, I'm just, I'm being quite stupid about this. I could just do that instead. Yeah. And so it's good to chat to him about a lot of things. But yeah, he's definitely a deep guy. But he's very very good to chat to.
Intelligent as fuck.
Yeah,
as well.
That's what makes him the coach that he is, right?
Yeah,
and
great,
the person.
Fantastic coach. Like.
You have a bronze at senior national level for wrestling.
Yes. That was
2019, I'm going to say.
2000 and I think 18. I think
18. What was that? Is that like? Is it the same kind of tournament format as like a jiu-jitsu where you work your way through a bracket?
So the bracket system's pretty much the same, and I think that tournament, I just come back off like holiday, and I was heavy. Very heavy. So I wasn't making 86 even, and I ended up entering the 97 bracket.
That just kind of shows your range. What are you? Did you say 74? You're normally at?
No, so that's what I normally compete at now. but I kind of set about 88-1. That's
up
my
to 94.
So I was like, but I wasn't like anywhere near 97. I know,
Jacksinated.
I wasn't anywhere near 97. I was like just shy 90.
Aye.
You know, so I was heavier than normal, but it was like 2 weeks out. I was like, oh, I'm not gonna cut. I'm just gonna train because I hadn't even really been training that much. You know, on holiday, like so I'd had like a week and a half off.
Yeah,
and then came back and I'd been training beforehand and that. It's not that I hadn't trained before the comp, but I was on holiday before, so the weight was on. Too much booze, too much food.
Yeah,
everyone had a
You
good
know what I
time.
mean? So, but yeah, so I jumped into that, and there was like 7 guys in my bracket for that one. So basically, the way it works, they'll break it up into two brackets of the smaller numbers. I mean, they do this anyway, but like there was a 4 and there's a 3, so I was in this 3, and I'd gone against Joe Hendry. He does ICW.
Oh
He
yeah,
wrestling.
the professional wrestling. Yeah.
I only remember this because
That's got a massive like nation scene in this country.
Yeah,
Professional wrestling.
I only remember this because Bradley knows him. Brad's like a massive.
So
fan of
like
him, so
when I originally spoke to Ryan about getting yourself on, I thought like could have done a really unique angle of getting Bradley on, who's now done professional wrestling, and you're doing amateur wrestling.
Yeah.
I thought that could have been like
totally, man.
Could
set
still
that
happen.
Up.
Yeah.
Set that up, man. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
do that. I'm keen for that.
because that's like two different ends of the stick.
Yeah, it is,
like,
Yeah.
It's funny because me and Brad will meet up sometimes. We have done where he's gone like, I want to do this move for wrestling, but I don't really know how to enter it. Like from an actual wrestling standpoint, what would you do? I'm going, well, what are you trying to achieve here? He's like, well, I'll take this guy over my head and then I want to dump him, whatever else. So there's a video he put out pushing his character Mayhem Brooks.
Mayhem Brooks,
and
yeah.
he was kind of posting about that. And one of the things he'd done, I remember showing him the move that he hit on this, but I'd never actually seen the matches he'd done it in, but he'd done the same move that I'd shown him. And he comes in and just chats away about it. So yeah,
That's pretty cool.
it'd be cool to have that because it is.
There's like an MMA crossover with ICW. I've seen Chris Bungard fought someone, and they've been using like a Celtic Rangers angle storyline behind it. It's actually really good. Like, but like
a bit sectarian.
But that's what kind of when people were interested in WWE. I think that's kind of MMA seems like. Bear with me when I say this. It's kind of like half boxing and half WWE in a way, in the entertainment side anyway.
Yeah.
So they have when you watch a boxing press conference and there's like 70 people before the fighters get up and speak, like from this commission and the WBC and some person that came off the street, and then you get to hear from Manny Pacquiao for 5 minutes, and then like WWE, there's people stealing people's girlfriends and hitting their best mates with chairs and stuff like that. Like,
It's a bit more drama to it, so.
Whereas like I think there's a good kind of combination
Absolutely.
in MMA.
Yeah.
Like I'm so excited for this Masvidal Covington fight, which the general consensus is that Colby's going out wrestling, which I agree with. But the build up to that, and like I said to you earlier, if by chance Masvidal knocks Colby out, Herb Dean or Mark Goddard or whoever's better have ice skates on to get to that point quick.
Yeah,
he's in trouble. He's trouble. Yeah.
But like, even I've put in like a couple of names. Like looking at the success of wrestling in MMA, right? You've got DC, Kane, Brock, Khabib, Yoel Romero, Usman, Colby, GSP, John Jones, Couture, Cejudo, Cruz, and Islam.
Yeah,
and that's basically the who's who of top guys, isn't it? Like,
Dominic Cruz is probably one of the most underrated wrestlers in MMA period, I would say.
well, you look at him against Dillashaw, and like you don't do that to Dillashaw. Well, you don't have them fights against Dillashaw without having some wrestling. Like
even when he fought, I know Cejudo beat him in that, but there's a point where Cejudo tries to take him down. This is like a gold medal Olympian, and Cruz stuffs the takedown. You know what I mean? And this is a guy that's been out for 5 years.
I think we touched on it earlier. I don't think you're kind of beating Yoel Romero for wrestling in MMA. I think that guy is but that guy's not just a wrestler. That guy's a gymnast. That guy's
he's just explosiveness.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of these like so. When I was over in last year, I went to Romania. Scottish squad. I was training over there, with the under 22s team and 23s, and then we trained with the actual Romanian team a couple of times. they're all insanely like flexible and just in tune with their bodies. Like we were doing a couple of training sessions, and there's like ropes for them to climb. That it's not, the equipment and everything. Not a crazy gym. You know what I mean? It's some mats, some ropes, pull-up bars. That's it. Bench. And these guys are just like handstand walks, all sorts of stuff. Like you look at Nico when he does it at the gym. Like he'll do handstand walks like it's nothing, and I'm like, can't even get up there. You know what I mean? Cartwheels, right? Like he just makes it look so fluid.
Yeah.
Same like when I was over there, like everything that the guys were doing, they're just so in tune with their bodies. And I think the gymnastics, that kind of side of things does bring it in, into that.
Yeah,
which will help with the
there's
rest.
a lot of them guys that can quite happily do the splits and
yeah.
backflips, and it's nothing to them, standing backflips even,
And throughout like that catalogue of names that you just reeled off there, the styles are very different as well. Like Yoel Romero and Khabib are not the same type of wrestling in the slightest, right?
You look at someone like GSP, amazing wrestling, no weak point in his game, but I'd say if you looked at a strong point in his game, it's probably his wrestling.
And he didn't really have a wrestling background either, I don't think, because they call him an
I'm
MMA wrestler. Did they
I'm
not?
not too sure about GSP's background.
I think he was more a Taekwondo guy. I think I could be spreading misinformation there though.
Not sure, but
I mean, Yoel Romero, he's benching the Empire State Building right now somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Guys mad.
But are you still watching UFC regular? And
I watch every now and again.
Are you more like do you watch college wrestling and things like that in America?
More watching like the college wrestling, and so I'm on a few different Facebook groups that talk about all the kind of stuff that's going on in college wrestling and that over in the States. And I kind of watch more like Kyle Dake, Burrows.
Did you see Burrows versus Askren?
Yeah.
Nearly put him into the crowd. I was like, how many points is that?
I watched a thing with Askren. I think it was on the Logan Paul's podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And they were chatting, and he basically said, like, before that, they were like, oh, we'll just have like a chilled match, like, and we'll just kind of put on a show for people.
Yeah.
And Burrows was like, yeah, sure. And then, like, he got on, like, I touched hands and then just went through him.
Yeah, like a bulldozer.
But he was like, nah, like, if I'm on the mat, I'm on the mat.
It's been a rough time for Ben Askren, man.
It has, yeah.
Because that happened to him, then the Masvidal knee happened, and then YouTubers are beating down on him. But, well, I mean, he's not really a boxer.
I think he threw that, I definitely think he threw it.
I think everyone against him's thrown it so far.
Well, Woodley, it's like, maybe I'm just in denial because I can't accept it.
See with Woodley, like, if you walk into that kind of punch, you're gonna get knocked out. Like, so I reckon he's,
and that guy's got stupid money to offer people, like something like these champions will have never made in their life.
Like, and it's all YouTube money.
Yeah, it's for like tasing rats and stuff.
These guys are a bit pissed that they've been getting punched in the face for 20 years, and this guy is like 10 times richer than he'll ever be.
Did you see Nate make that guy spill his beer?
No.
You don't see that?
That was funny as fuck. You like walk past the boy and he's like that.
Yeah, 10 points for punching and the beer just goes everywhere.
I've never seen that. Like,
oh, it was brilliant.
Jesus.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
But it's good. You look at the money and like even sports like kickboxing, like Glory. Look at the money it was in that for a while.
Yeah.
You know,
Israel Adesanya was on Joe Rogan a few years ago, and he was like part of these kickboxing franchises, I guess you would call them, in China and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he was saying he was making good enough money over there, but the reason that he came to MMA is he didn't want to feel vulnerable. He was like, I couldn't go throughout a career saying that I'm a fighter without learning these skills in grappling.
Yeah.
Because if it happened on the street, I'm still vulnerable. If someone's a good wrestler, they're going to take me down and pound my face in.
Yeah.
So, and obviously he's the UFC middleweight champion now.
Sounds crazy. So that, like, a bit about the Scottish wrestling scene, Dougie, like the amateur, like, who is your upping? Like I've obviously heard of Kieran Malone and things like that, but is there any guys that are like that next level? We know Nico's kind of.
Honestly, everyone there. I go in and all the guys I wrestle against, I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Like it's also like I've not ever had it as well where I've been in a room just full of wrestlers. So like we started training probably like last year, April. So like the team kind of started getting developed as 2020 was kind of kicking off, and then went to COVID. So it's like we couldn't train. And then as we got into April last year, that's when training started kicking off. So we're doing like beforehand from January to then, we were doing loads of Zoom stuff. Coming back out of 2020, we were doing loads of Zoom training. There was a lot of like hit sessions and stuff like that we were doing just to keep the fitness base up. And then as soon as we could get on a mat, we were in, and it was like being on just a mat full of wrestlers, because it's different. Like, it's different wrestling with a jits guy to wrestling with a wrestler.
Can't pull guard.
I know, yeah, and you know, like even just the posture and everything, the positioning these guys get into, and like watching a lot of the guys just move, like when you're in there in between rounds. And the way we do it at training, usually when we go down, if it's matches on a Friday, we'll do a full match. So you'll do 3 minutes with the same guy, rest for 30 seconds, and you go for 3 minutes. Then you'll come off for a match, and then you'll go on again. So it's like we're actually kind of doing it as a simulation almost of an actual match on the mat. At comp, so being on that mat with a load of different wrestlers, that a lot of them have just done wrestling. A lot of them don't do any jiu-jitsu or MMA or anything like that. So all they know is wrestling, and like the grips, the postures, being in different positions.
A lot of different styles of wrestling as well. Is there?
A lot. So like some guys are gripping up and they're looking for your ankle. Some guys are just trying to double through you. Some guys are looking to snap you down.
How would you define your style of wrestling, Dougie? Like catch wrestling?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, I've still got that kind of standard kind of clinch. I'd say like more upper body, but then when I'm further away from somebody, I like to shoot.
I like that.
From a distance.
I have a question to ask Dougie about pummeling.
Oh yeah, like I've always like been like told in that when like someone's speaking to me about it, like pummeling in like MMA or wrestling is like one of the most like taxing things in the body in combat sports. Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm no expert in it. So
when you're drilling it, it's very light, it's very fluid, and all you're looking to do is get your hand underneath, and then your opponent's doing the same thing. You're just going back and forth and just getting that. But see, when you're actually trying to fight for that position when you're grappling, if you take somebody's, a collar tie, right? Take somebody's neck, and then you're looking to try and get maybe an underhook or something like that. Like, you getting that underhook is going to be fucking hard.
Yeah.
Because they're not letting you at that point. The elbows are tight, the hands are there, they're putting their blocks in their heads. Their first line of defense.
Do you think that's like the most taxing thing about wrestling is the resistance, because it's like two forces kind of trying to overcome each other? It's like
cardiovascular training and strength training.
Yeah.
At the same time.
It's not like jiu-jitsu where you're going to let a guy come a little bit to try and feed him into something. You know, you've got two essentially bulls going at each other.
Force it, yeah.
And they do, like, there's a 30-second penalty time. So like if you're on the mat in a comp and you are the one who's not kind of taking center of the mat and you're getting kind of pushed around and you're not being active and trying to attack, they'll deduct a point. Basically, they'll give you 30 seconds to try and attack, or they'll deduct a point. So like you see it sometimes, like in matches where guys will, they'll get to that 30-second point. It's like, oh shit, I need to attack, and that kind of changes because the whole dynamic of the match, because they're then under this pressure that they need to go forward. So that kind of thing, that's a whole different kind of topic of conversation. It's like tactical wrestling then. Yeah. Like, not, maybe you're willing to give up a point on deduction if you're 5 points ahead, and you want to, you're 30 seconds out from the match. You let them deduct the point because you're like, well, I'm going to win anyway. Yeah. But yeah, it's very, very, very taxing.
There's that famous DC quote, embrace the grind.
Yeah.
You ever heard of that before? Yeah. I think that kind of sums up wrestling probably.
It applies to
is
life as well.
Yeah.
It's just a very, very taxing, brutal sport. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have your own gym, Doug?
No.
No.
I actually had to close it during COVID. It's completely closed now. So I closed it December last year.
Right.
Basically, I've got more people online than I do offline. So
you're still keeping the
still doing PT, still in the fitness industry. I just not with the gym anymore.
Do you want to give your PT a bit of a plug, like?
Yeah. We'll link it in the description and everything.
I'll give you the kind of background, but yeah, 2019, December 2018, I took over, had the gym in 2019, and that was just like the year of fitness. That's what it felt like, because it was so busy. We had people coming in. it's like 20 people at a class, 3 classes on a night, 20 people in every single one, Monday to Friday. And then we'd have a class on Saturday morning, packed out as well. We'd have 3 coaches, all PTing at the same time through the gym. And sometimes it'd be group, so there'd be up to 4 people in a session. Sometimes it'd be 1-to-1. It was just hectic, absolutely hectic. And then during COVID, I've basically been an Amazon marketer. That's what I've been, because people have been like, oh, Doug, I need to get a bit of kit. I want to get this bit of kit for home. What should I get? And I'm like, right, hang on a minute. I'll go and find you a decent deal. Find them set of dumbbells around. Ping that off. I should have been getting commission off Amazon.
Jeff Bezos is sitting there like, good. I need more space trips.
Exactly. So yeah, like that's kind of like 2020 and 2021. Like obviously we're open for a little bit during 2020, but it's just not the same. Like COVID,
it's proper killed that kind of industry, right? It's just such a shame.
So I mean, online is more of a thing now.
Yeah.
Like a lot more people are doing it. So that's why I kind of just made the decision last year. I was like, what, I've keeping this open for what?
I suppose the benefit online as well is you can open out your services to anyone. It doesn't have to be local people.
Exactly. You can't. I mean, like you could have somebody in the States that you're working with, and you're here in Murray in Elgin.
It's quite
crazy.
The internet's changing the game forever, really, isn't it?
Definitely, and it's mad. So like coaching online now is either via Zoom.
What's your kind of average working day just now?
So a lot of times it's just check-ins and stuff.
Yeah.
That I'm doing, and more. I'm more putting educational videos together for people, for my clients. So like there'll be things that come up. Maybe somebody will come in. They'll go, "Oh look, I'm really struggling with a dumbbell bench press. I feel like I've got a really tight shoulder when I do it, and maybe they're benching like this, and they're going really wide, and they're feeling a lot of pain in their shoulders. So it's then my job to go and figure out, right, okay, what options can I give them that are going to be beneficial for them to allow them to go and do that exercise with no pain and still progress. So maybe instead of keeping out here, we're tucking the elbows in, we're keeping a more neutral grip. Maybe we're changing the exercise up completely. But it's going away and kind of creating them educational videos and putting them on. So at the minute I'm just putting them onto YouTube, and that's kind of the platform I'm using. Just keeps it nice and simple, but there's just a stream of videos in there for people to go and get their questions answered. So if it's a question I constantly keep getting, I'll go and make a video for it and just put it up. But it really is just answering questions and kind of helping people build their confidence, showing people like simply like if you're going to the gym, like I'm training at the lunch center at the minute, right? It's packed in there. Like especially now January, loads of people are coming back in. It's packed, and you're in there and you're trying to find space. And like even I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable, and I'm teaching people, so I'm like there. I'm like, oh fuck, there's so many people here. I've got no room, and it's like, well, if I was a client, what could I do to make my life easier? Well, I can go and grab that bench. I can grab a dumbbell, and I can go and just crack on with my workout with just these pieces of equipment, rather than going, here's 15 different pieces of equipment you need for you, and sending them around the gym to try and do stuff. It's just, right, go and grab a dumbbell, grab a bench, create your little space, find yourself somewhere to train, and then you can crack on with your workout here, rather than all this different faff that you need. It's anyone can get a program. That's the thing. Anyone can get a program online. You can go to fucking bodybuilding.com, type it in. Oh, I want a program for getting bigger. Cool. Here's a workout plan, and there'll be 20 different bits of kit in there that you need: barbells, plates, dumbbells, kettlebells, cable machine, all these different machines in the gym that you use for different muscle groups. And that, if the gym's packed, well, you're gonna be in there for 4 hours just trying to get on different things. Whereas if you can actually go to somebody and say, look, I'm in the gym at this time at 5 p.m. at night, and it's hectic. I can't get what kit I need, and I can go, okay, well, what kits can you kind of get? What bits of kit can you get your hand on and use? And they'll go, oh, there's a dumbbell rack there. There's this. I'll get a list of equipment, and I'll just create a workout that's going to be nice and simple. A workout plan for the next 4, 6, 12, 8 weeks. That's going to be something that's going to push them, progress them, but at the same time allow them to go in and get a comfortable session without feeling stressed. At the minute, it's building people's confidence up with it all. It's like anything. It's like starting a new martial art, or you just come to your first jits class.
It's very similar. Like when I went to a gym in 2019. I'm someone that used to be like 400 pounds or like more with the obese and stuff like that. So like I lost like £100 for like my own means of like running
yeah.
and keto. Keto's not the healthiest diet, but I just kind of decided it's not healthy being £400. So the quicker I get away from that, the better.
It's what works, though, isn't it?
Like,
Exactly, it's what works for you. Like I'm doing a kind of presentation I'm putting together at the minute, and I'm going to be doing a talk soon, which is basically talking about a little bit more about nutrition. Now, you have a toolbox, right? Like if you want to lose body fat, you got to be in a calorie deficit. You probably go on Instagram, you'll hear me talk about this all the time. You hear most coaches talk about this all the time, but that's the like scientific principle that you need to know. That's why you're losing weight. But the how is all them different tools that are actually in your toolbox. So if you want to go keto and that works well for you, and you find that really easy to stick to, do it.
Yeah.
If
something sustainable, right?
Yeah, exactly. Something sustainable. It's like, I mean, I'm bad for this as well. Like 5-6 years ago, I'd be like, it's the world shit. Wait, what's this shit? And but at the end of the day, the reason I think it's shit is because they're not telling people why they're losing weight. They're just going, oh, if you do this, you'll lose weight because you're not having that many sins or whatever else. Yeah. But in reality, it's because they're in a deficit. But they don't tell you that because they think they'll lose you in terms of their marketing plan.
When people realize how basic it is, they want to buy into their bullshit.
Before I started going to the gym, I'd hit like a roadblock. Right, I'd lost like 120 pounds. I wanted to go further, right, because I was like, I've came this far. I'm not just going to settle for mediocrity. But I was like shit scared of the gym environment because like I'd just kind of worked right through my own means, and like having a PT and then actually realizing that the people, obviously you get some people that are like lifting weights and maybe over exaggerating the grunt a bit, but apart from that, it was fine. But like my PT is someone that I still keep in touch to this day because the gym actually closed down and that, but keep in touch with, and like I feel like there's a good kind of relationship there with how they help me continue to progress.
That's it. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Personal side to it,
Yeah, it is. It's personal. It's going to somebody, and it doesn't matter what gym you're in, where you are in the world, as long as that person that you're working with is there to help you and give you it's giving you the information so that you can make your decision, rather than going like, you have to do this. It's okay, well, you can do this, but you can also do this. Just find what works for you. Like, I was like pissed at my dad. It's one of them things, like, he does keto, right? And that works really well for him. And just because that's the foods he likes to eat, he doesn't really like eating, like, he doesn't have pasta or he doesn't have carbs much. But he's always banging on about it, keto. And I like rip the piss out of him for it. We have a little bit of banter about it because it's one of them things, like, keto in the fitness industry, everyone's bashing on it, you know what I mean? And it is, but I mean, even me to a certain extent, I've spoke badly of keto before too, but it's not. The more and more you think about it, the more and more you realize it, and I've realized this over time, is it's what works for that person. What works for you is not going to work for you. You know what I mean? It's that's just the way it is. So you've got to find what makes your life easiest and simplest, so that you can achieve the thing that you want to achieve, without it being like a big push and it being a really, really hard thing that you've got to do, Like, if you really enjoy eating, mainly meat and kind of high fat foods, sweet.
This was 5 years ago. I do not follow that. It was desperate times, £400. I could have been on a ventilator. You know what I mean?
Totally,
I don't really. I can't imagine. Like, when I think of PT, I've just got like a very stereotypical view of PT.
It'd be like one of those YouTube videos, when they're like mid-squat as the thumbnail.
Like that. I've got like in my head, I've got like a drill sergeant kicking your door in at 6 in the morning, like, fucking get out of your bed. Like, obviously it's not like that, but do you have a lot of like one-to-one time where you need to stay with the person to keep them on track? Like, it's a lot of speaking, motivating, and a lot of it's like, it's more reassuring people. Yeah. Like, that they, people, a lot of time, they're getting themselves on the right track. Like, I've had people talk this week that have been talking about, like, I'm feeling like this. Like, so one of my clients has been saying that they've been feeling really drained and really tired. Now, they're currently trying to lose body fat, so they're in a deficit, so they're going to be feeling a little bit drained, a little bit tired. That you're consuming less energy than you're burning off, so it's going to happen. Yeah. But what they've also done is, like, reduce their carbs massively,
because in their head they've still got this thought process of carbs are the devil.
Yeah.
Carbs are the devil. Carbs are the, you can't eat bread, you can't eat pasta. So this week, my conversation with them was, look, let's try and increase your carbohydrates and let's see how you feel. She's increased her carbs. She feels like she's got more energy. And then it's like, let's look at that, but let's also look at how's your hydration levels? Are you getting good sleep? How many hours of sleep are you getting? Because if you're getting 4 hours a night, you're going to be tired.
It's not good.
So it's looking at them different areas, because I think when you're doing it yourself, you kind of get tunnel vision. You're like, oh, this is the problem I'm having, but I don't know why.
Yeah, and then we look for like an instant blame. Yeah, like
Exactly.
it must be white rice. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly, Whereas instead of going like, I'll look at my actual whole life, and actually looking at yourself a little bit more and going, right, what am I actually doing? Like, I'm sitting up playing COD until 3 a.m. Why am I tired when I get up at 6? I don't know.
It's like in denial about it in your head. Like.
You love doing that thing, so you don't want to say that that's the thing that's causing the issue, but you've kind of just got to look at your whole your life as a whole and go, right, what's happening here, here, and here, and that's really it for in terms of coaching for just now, like PT and people.
Sometimes it can be a tiny change as well. Like,
yeah, dude, yeah.
Like something so small in your life that can make that massive
difference. It is. It's like, I always push for a lot of people, just go out walking, walk. Like, main few reasons: it's great for your health, it's free, like, and it's also time for you to be in your own head. Like, I take my dog out for a walk every day, like, but that's also time for me to go, like, that 30 minutes, 45 minutes where I can put a podcast on if I want. I can listen to podcast. If I don't want anything on, I can just go and walk and think about things that are happening in my life that I want to do. And, it's a bit of time for you to kind of de-stress and debrief from the world. So always push that. And then, just like training. You could
say the only way to go forward is on reflection.
Yeah.
Totally,
so,
yeah.
And in the summer, you'll get running in there as well, because you will be dodging seagulls around.
Yeah,
when you're walking.
Especially when you're in Lossy too. It is, yeah. It's definitely reassuring. So a lot of time for people. I think it's just people wanting to know that they're actually what they're doing is useful and it's gonna get them to the result that they want to get.
Yeah.
One of your videos on the Fit page, is where you do recaps with like clients and stuff like that, and I really enjoy those conversations because I think you're talking about that kind of realization or being honest with yourself. I think that's something that comes not in like a you're a piece of shit kind of way. You're just like getting people to kind of things that maybe they would ignore, and we all do stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
And just kind of recognizing that, and then making your life better for the as a result of that.
Yeah, that's it. Like you are the only person that can change your life. Yeah. Like unless something dramatic happens, like you get taken to prison or something.
Yeah.
Like that. But again, you're the person.
It's usually other people that are controlling that.
So if it's you that can change it, it's just a case of turning the flip around, looking at yourself and going, okay, hang on, what am I actually doing as a whole? Like if you actually mapped out your day to day of what you do, like how much time are you maybe like, say you're sitting there saying, oh, I want to lose weight, but then in the evening you're watching 6 hours of Netflix and doing fuck all. Like your actions aren't pushing towards your goal.
People spent as much time thinking about the things they want to do and actually doing them things, the world would be a totally different place. Like, because everyone's got great intentions, but when it actually comes to doing that thing, like a lot of people are hesitant, and that can be for a number of different issues. Like confidence is a big one,
massive,
but also like fear.
There's also like
fear.
a suppression thing in today's world. Like what, like people when they have like addictions, whether it be alcohol or maybe it might be junk food, smoke, all the kind of things you can think of. I read a book where it was like companies actually that sell those products promote that, because if you tell someone something is hard, they are very much less likely to follow through on that.
Yeah.
And I do believe that kind of theory, like I don't think that there's just an instant. There is things that are like a chemical that people are addicted to and that. But I think it is overplayed to the extent of they just want it constantly in your mind that it's going to be a battle for you to not have.
Things like addictions or like addictions to junk food, it's a chemical imbalance of your brain. It's your brain telling you need that thing. It's you having to change your mind. It changes that chemical, and it's amazing how that actually works.
Yeah,
just you thinking differently changes
just
your chemistry
body,
of your brain.
Totally.
Everything's
mindset.
Yeah,
every single thing. Like there's people like I've trained loads of different people, right? And some people will come into the gym, and like women, I train the most, and they'll come in, and I'll be training them. I'll be like, right, oh, we could up the weight on that. I'm like, oh no, I can't do it. And I know, I'm like, you're pushing those 10 kilo dumbbells like they're nothing. You know what I mean? Like you're holding like a feather. Yeah. Like you could go up. I know you're stronger, but they don't believe they're stronger. They don't believe in themselves enough at that point to go, oh, I'll try the next heavier weight, And then you kind of talk them out of doing it, and they'll go, oh, they'll go to 12. And I'll be like, oh, that looks pretty easy too. Oh, we'll go to 15. Oh, we'll go to 17. Before you know it, they're like double what they were doing before, and they're absolutely smashing it, still hitting the same number of reps. But in their head, they're like, oh, whatever reason it is, they don't have that self-belief that they could do it. Or maybe they think like women always go, weights are going to make me bulky. That's still that common misconception. Whereas there's loads of women that are training, loads of people I've trained that are consistently training weights, and they're not getting big and bulky, because they're not on steroids.
Yeah.
So it's, not to say it's all steroids. Some people
I'd imagine like bulk, aside from Mexican supplements.
Did you see a lot of like meatheads when you were running in the gym, like steroid guys that would come in or anything like that, Doug?
They were taking the Jack scene, perhaps. I
mean,
I don't even know if I can keep that in.
you don't need to name any names, like. But like,
no, I used to. So like when I used to first like train years and years ago when I was younger, so years and years ago, like 14, so 12 years now. But there was a lot of big guys in the gym then, and like a lot of big guys swagging about, and you look at them, you're going
under their arms.
You're looking at them thinking, you could just be been training for years.
I think you could tell by people's actions as well. Like one that I noticed is like if someone slammed the weight back down onto the rack, I'm like, you're definitely on something.
I used to get the guys that'll go and pump like iron for an hour and then run a 10k on the treadmill, and you're like, steroids.
Something you look at like these CrossFit athletes and that, and they're like, whoa, like those guys.
Some of these not Netflix documentaries about the best in the world, and these guys are insane. Like, this is their job, and they get paid a lot of money.
Yeah, totally. So. Like, well, that's what I always say to like a lot of my pals and stuff. Like, I'm chatting to them, like, oh, that fucker's taking steroids. They shouldn't be doing that. I'm like, well, if you were getting paid like $100,000, to win this event,
if somebody's paying you £250,000 a year to be a wrestler, you're probably going to be one of the best wrestlers in the country. Yeah, because you're not having to think about life. You're getting paid to do what you want to do.
I suppose there's a difference as well in like steroids for bodybuilding, where it's not really fucking everyone over because everyone's on it, whereas if you're competing, you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna split some EPO in that water, and then you outlast someone when it's not really you, it's from the kind of drugs that are in your system. Then it's a whole different.
There's that guy on YouTube, I can't remember, Rich Piazza, but he
died.
He was a guy who was like, I take steroids, look at the fucking size of me. He's like, he was openly admitted that he took steroids, like, but
Rumble Johnson admitted to it as well when he was bodybuilding.
Yeah, Rumble.
Well, he went up to like 700 pounds of just steel, didn't he?
Rumble Johnson's been anywhere from 260 to 140. But that.
I used to go to the gym though. Like I kind of kept my, my group, my kind of target market of people, was what didn't matter, it was man or woman really. I tend to have more women. But I kept it people who were wanting to come to the gym who were feeling uncomfortable about being in a bigger gym. So they could come in and everyone would just chat away and stuff like that. So I try to keep it quite closed off in that sense. So I did have like a massive guy come in who, I thought, I don't think you fit the bill here. This probably isn't the best place for you to be. Like, I just politely say like, oh, we actually haven't got any space left at the minute.
But in reality, it's get the fudge in.
Exactly. So
it's like I'm not trying to hold that weight if you drop it.
Like, I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying that any guy that came in there, like there's one of my pals, Dave. He came in. Dude, he's massive. He is huge. Like he's like 6'4", and he's just wide. He'd come in and train, but he spoke to everybody. was like Sam, and like I knew him, so I felt comfortable having a guy who would look very intimidating to a lot of people going in, be there because he'd be like, "Oh hi, how you doing? Do you need to hand me your weight? Like I need help." You know, so he's a very like chilled out character, and whereas like when you don't know people and you're trying to keep that,
they could have like
difficult.
that quick trigger or something like that. You don't know, like
I've seen that before. Like you know, a few folk that trained when Ali had it, and like you know, I'm not gonna name names, but people would come in and they at the time were on, you know, not that we knew that was what they were doing, but they were on, and they'd come in and you could like the personality
change.
Sometimes it was just like they'd be getting mad hyped about doing a bench, and like you know somebody would say something to them like, "Oh, dude, can you turn your music down?" Fuck off. And you're like, all right, chill out. Like,
yeah.
Do you know what I
It's
mean?
not a good environment for
It's
like,
not,
especially
it's
clients
awkward.
to like be in, right?
And when it is, that's the bread and butter of the business is having clients in there and training them, and you're trying to make people feel comfortable, welcome, and like it's an easy environment to be in. That's just not what you want. And it's not to say these people aren't nice people. It's just the vibe that's given off at that point in time.
I suppose it's really, you can't really say, oh, you're not coming in here to train, you're on roids, because you can't fucking, well, one, you can't prove that shit.
Yeah.
And two, like, as long as you're not seeing it in your facility, you're getting customers in the door, you know. If you're trying to run a business at the end of the day, and it's like, this is a paying customer, you know, I can't treat them any differently just because of someone's misconception of them.
Yeah.
You know? And you get some totally jacked guys that are not on roids, and you think they're on roids, and
it's like Francis Ngannou, he don't even lift weights, and I'm like, what?
He's massive.
But like some guys that are genuinely got that natural good physique.
Traore is another one. The Wolves player.
Traore, the big Wolves player. He's just like amazingly built, but there's not a roid in his system, you know.
Doesn't lift weights either. I call a bit of BS on that, but
me too. Like I think that's all he does.
In the gym all the time.
Pretty shit fit man, but he's built. Right?
Nice.
So that's
got a couple quick questions. Just general ones before we let you go. We've never been going 2 hours. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
I feel like 2 hours at all, man.
So one thing I wanted to kind of know is how important and how quick do you get that kind of camaraderie that kind of comes from combat sports? Because obviously, like, when you train at SBG, like, you've got Kev, Ginge, Aiden, Martin, and yourself that have all kind of stemmed this gym to be what it is today and whatnot, and all competed and been in each other's corners and whatnot. And you can include Ross Houston and Cam Chang, obviously, as well in that.
I think very quickly, you know, when you're seeing these people constantly, every single day, like 2-3 weeks in, you're like, these are my guys. Like, you know what I mean? It comes very, very quick. It's very, very natural too because you're spending more time with them.
You're very close with someone who sweats all over you.
Exactly, and that's it. When you're in weird positions and you're like you got somebody's like legs over your shoulder and your face is like in their junk and you're like, you know, you have a laugh with it, and you know all the guys down at SPG, they just have a laugh all the time. That's the thing. I think that's the positive part about going in. It's just a laugh all the time, even when you're getting absolutely battered. Like you're still having a laugh and a joke. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
And last one before we let you go is Kev was saying to us that if he hadn't got involved in combat sports, he reckoned he would have been not been a bad person, but been less of a person in the sense he was talking about, like he was hanging about with people that were taking advantage of him and like getting himself in stupid situations and like pubs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you think combat sports has been like an overall positive thing for you, and it might have went a different way had it not 100%. Been there?
Yeah, the reason I got into combat sports is because I kind of got into a few fights at school and stuff, and like I kind of just lost my head. Like I got so angry that I'd be punching somebody in the face and smashing their head off the floor because I was just in a rage. And you know that's all fine and well when you're young and you're not actually doing too much damage to somebody. But as you get older, like, and if you're doing that on a pub or in the street, you're gonna be going to prison. So like, as well, like to defend myself too, because I felt like I kind of all my pals were a little bit more kind of geeky. Didn't really do any sports and stuff like that, and that was like I did sports, but I, you know, was kind of pally with all these people, and you know, I kind of felt like I had to defend and protect. I kind of got that in me. I've got quite a protective instinct. The group of people that I'm with, I feel like I've got to look after them. So if I don't feel I can, I kind of felt like a little bit shit. I didn't like it because I'd be nervous about the situation. So like if I was going to like a party or something like that, I'd feel nervous at a young age because I was like, oh, you don't know what's going to happen. Or you'd go uptown to maybe like the youth cafe. That's where I was going at the time. And like there'd be lads from the academy there and you'd be like, oh, you know, there's always a little bit of tension.
Yeah,
so a weird little bit of tension. Exactly, yeah. So, and you're like, you know, you just want to be able to look after yourself. So for me, I was like, I want to do that. But also like when I did end up getting into fights, like, you know, I'd end up hurting people. Like, and it'd be usually if I fought people, it wasn't a fight. I was just kicking fuck out of somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and even if it was a fight, I was that enraged that a lot of times, you know, it's only 30 seconds or so that it's happening, but I'd end up getting the better of the person because I was so fuming, so mad, and I was so intent on what I was doing. It didn't matter what the person tried to do at that point in time. Obviously, that's not going to work with everybody. It's just kind of luck of the draw at that point.
Yeah.
You know, if I'd got mad and maybe went to Martin,
you know, you would not be here today.
No, exactly. But you know, it's like it just depends who you're having that occasion with at the time. But yeah, I definitely think I'd be in a different place because you know it's I've been in situations now where I've been out in the pub or in like Joanna's and stuff, and folk have started on me, and like, you know, it's got a little bit of a rough and tumble, but at the end of the day, I've just gone, fuck this, I'm out, see you later. Like, I don't need to be here. What am I trying to prove to this guy?
Exactly.
Like, I don't need to prove it. But see, when you're not, and you feel like you have to prove yourself in front of everybody because you don't know what you can do. You're like, I have to tell everyone that I can. I'm a big, strong man, I can fight. Like, and it's that, like, you know, I see it all the time with, like, people, you know, I go to, like, house parties and whatever else with pals, and I'll see other lads there, and there's always a fight of some sort in there. There's always some sort of drama, and it's people just getting big. Oh, I'll fight you, and it always ends up in this like basically wrestling match, doesn't it? Two guys just like tussling around each other again.
Get off!
Yeah, exactly. I just think like now when I see situations like that, I'm just like, oh, it's fucking pointless. Like I know, like I can look after myself. I know I can look after the people around me. I feel good with that. But at the same time, you don't know who you're fighting.
Yeah,
you don't know what
exactly.
Know, and you don't know what's going. And when you get, you know, it goes back to that humility thing we were talking about earlier. Like when you know that you could walk into a gym, see a guy, and you think, "Oh, fucking smash you," and then he destroys you.
Absolutely right.
You know, and then you're like, maybe that could be me on the street. That could end up me.
Or you could go the other way, and you'd be like, "Well, that guy could have a knife."
Exactly. Yeah.
You just don't know. So it kind of, I think it levels your head out, kind of, and because you understand where you are and what you can do, and you know how a fight can play out when you've been in so many in training. So then when you actually think about it, fuck this, I'll do this on a Monday night, I don't even do this Saturday. You know what I mean? Like,
I would love to see the stat of guys that get into a fight on a Saturday night in the pub who've actually ever been in a sober fight in their life.
I know.
Probably like some kind of
very minimal, like
probably some like mental block that probably causes them to be like that when they do drink.
That's it, and it's a drink it takes out in them. These guys have obviously got this in them, and they're obviously thinking this, and it takes a drink to kind of get out in them, you know. And it's like they get this kind of god complex almost.
Totally.
Mad Dog 2020, and they're a bloody king. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. I definitely think it's. Anyone who's kind of on that kind of knife of falling either side of being like, you know, maybe a bit scrappy and stuff like that. I think combat sports is definitely something that'll level you out and give you that, just respect for other people and humility to understand, like, either, you know, one side, you could absolutely smash somebody on the street that you're walking past, or the other side that they know and they could smash you too. You know,
like, a lot of people that realize humility is a good thing to have.
Exactly. They see it as a weakness when it's really a strength.
It's totally a strength.
Definitely.
So what does the next couple of years hold for yourself in the
so this is where I'm going to do my plug. Coaching, online coaching, and face-to-face coaching. I'm still going to be doing that. So definitely.
Where can people find you?
On Instagram at Coach Nevins23 and on Facebook at Doug Nevins PT. You can get me on there.
Sweet.
So there's that. Wrestling wise, I'm just going to be focusing on more and more with the Scotland team, and kind of aiming for that Commonwealth games.
Good luck.
That's
Sweet, man.
thank you very much. That's my goal. Is to go there and just get better at wrestling and just enjoy the process of it, because at the end of the day, like, you're not going to be doing it for your whole life. There's going to be a point where you're going to have to stop.
100%.
Just enjoy it while.
Is the MMA career over?
You done with the switch kicks?
I don't know, maybe. Do you know what? I toy with this idea all the time. I definitely want to get back into jits. I've not been doing as much jits over the last kind of 4 years, just because I've been wrestling more. So I want to get back into rolling a bit more and getting back to jits classes and stuff.
Hope you're watching, Martin.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, you can drag me down. But yeah, it's things like that, like seeing like Martin and Kev, recently getting promoted and stuff. I'm like, I've been rolling with these guys and training with these guys for years now. And it kind of gives you that bit of incentive to like spur
Even
on.
like what I noticed is people like Jamie Steele,
Yeah, totally.
Jamie Steele, when he first came, Jamie's a teacher, big lanky guy, big ginger-headed guy, and to look at him, you think, this is just some random Scottish guy, and then Jamie's got the longest legs in the world.
Super
He's
long
now
legs.
a blue belt, and he's actually like a decent level blue belt. He is a guy that is just trained, and through that, he's not got any outstanding physical abilities. He's not the best athlete in the world.
Perseverance, though.
Pure perseverance has got to
Totally.
where he's got to,
100%. Like, I hadn't rolled with him for maybe like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Came back and rolled with him a couple of months back now, and yeah, his levels come on so much, and it's mad. And to think like at that point, that's somebody, when I was training jiu-jitsu all the time, that was like one of the white belts that had come in, and he's now the level has just come up. So totally, it's all, you don't realize what you've got in Elgin. To the people in Elgin, anyone listening, you don't realize what you've got at SPG Murray, because there's so many high level guys there.
I would imagine that's probably a more proud moment for the likes of Kevin Martin than actually getting themselves promoted, as seeing someone.
I can only imagine how proud them guys are feeling with the likes of someone like Shay.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, Shay is putting just as much work himself, more than anyone, and he's the biggest student of the game you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
But Martin, that must take some smile on her face watching him
watching him
world
go
title
world
levels.
title,
That's
just being a part of that journey for that person. 100%.
Like, I can see Shay being very quickly fast tracked to black belt in the next 5 to 10 years. He is that elite level, and it 100%. Must be like, it's like amazing to think. I was that guy's first coach, or
Totally.
Even like myself, I've rolled with that guy. It's just things like that.
That gym is definitely on the rise, and like in a pincer maneuver, right? Everyone's just going for it.
I think there was a while where they were just on an absolute tear with MMA. Hadn't been beaten. Nobody in the gym had been beaten in a few years. And then jits, they were just smashing everything. But the one that always gets to me, if you follow Smooth Comp online, you'll always find the team medals at the end of comps. SPG are always like fourth, third, sometimes second, and there's normally like 4 or 5 guys competing at a time, and then you've got teams like the Grip House who've got 40 guys competing. So it just, I suppose it's like, it's intense coaching because you're getting a lot more one-to-one stuff. You're not having to deal with 40 different jits classes a week. But it definitely helps.
It is, it's a hidden gem in terms of combat sports up here. To have that,
and the SBG affiliation, I suppose, helps massively. You've got access to high level coaches. Like,
it is mad. Like, you look at the guys there, like, purple belt, brown belts, black belt now in that club, and like most people think, like, people just who don't understand jiu-jitsu or that kind of combat sport, they'll go in, they'll go, oh, black belt, and it's like that was a lot harder to get than like a kickboxing black belt. Like, that was a lot harder.
It's not your standard 8-year-old kickboxing black belt.
Exactly.
It's like, what's the quickest that someone's done? Is it 4 years?
I think BJ Penn was 3. I'm sure he was like 3.5 years.
The average is 10 though, right? Something like that.
I think
I'm not trying to make it sound like a driving test or anything.
More than that, I would say you're probably talking like 15 years.
15, 20.
And that's not just like, a bit of a hobbyist. That's probably training 4 or 5 times a week to get to that level.
Totally.
And a lot of these guys, I wouldn't say all of them, but 99.9% of black belts have competed at every level they've been at.
Yeah. Aye.
There's just like so many surreal moments for this area
Do you
right
not
now.
notice, like, are you on Scottish BJJ page and the underground?
Yeah, the underground, yeah.
Do you not notice the amount of black belts Scotland's had in the last 6 months? Like,
it's crazy.
Absolutely exploded. There must be, when I started training, I think there was 2. And I think that was Paul McBain. Not Paul McBain, sorry, Paul McVeigh, is it?
McVeigh, yeah.
And Marcos Nardini. I think they were the only 2 at the time.
Yeah.
And now I think you've got about 30 odd. Like,
Jesus.
Which it's mad. It just shows like how many people have been training consistently over the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
In jits, and now it's kind of coming in. Like now we've got a good base of black belts and high level guys.
And it's shown in the MMA scene as well.
Yeah.
Totally.
And you've got people like Aidan Stephen and Ross Houston fighting. Well, it was on BT Sport before they removed it and put it on Fight Pass. In Cage Warriors, I remember someone said to me, "Oh, Aidan Stephen's fighting on BT Sport." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "This is the channel that has the Champions League final on it." And then the way that it just completed the circle with what he did to Chris Edwards that night in front of the biggest audience. And you're like, these dudes are absolutely killing it, man. So
it's like it's crazy to think you were talking about Shea before, like world champion from Fintorn. It's like
still gonna get
it's same, somewhere. Exactly. It's like that. You're watching these guys from Inverness, from Elgin, that are fighting on TV. Back in the day, that
blows my mind. That sentence right there.
Even
like,
back in the day, guys from Scotland,
fighting
on the scene, like it just didn't happen. Robert Whiteford and that, they were the first kind of guys. Scottish MMA didn't really exist apart from like a local level.
Yeah.
Like Chris Duncan now.
Chris
Craig doing really well for himself.
Animal. Like he got really unlucky in his last fight, Duncan, but he's an animal.
Yeah, he'll come back for sure.
There's a lot more guys now.
Yeah.
And they're seeking out the training. Like they're seeking out.
And Scotland's always been like, you look at the history of Scottish boxers. Rich history in Scottish boxing. Like, and
we've got one of the undisputed champions right now, right? Josh Taylor.
Yeah. Yep. But even when you go back to like Arthur Ashe and all that,
Jim Watt
way back then, like that's a good pedigree to come from. So you can see, you hope it like falls into MMA as well.
Yeah,
we're a tough breed of Scottish.
yeah, 100%. Is
onwards and upwards. Well,
yeah.
Anyway, this has been an absolute pleasure, gents.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed it. We've got a heater this time, so
you've
not had to suffer as much this time.
No, absolutely.
Appreciate the time, dude.
Thank you very much.
It's been 2 hours, so I appreciate the little thing that we've got going on here. We'll set up that thing.
Me and Brad.
We'll
do that. That sounds good to me.
We're going to do that, and then I think we've got Kev to agree to the last time, but I think Ryan's planning on taking this to SBG and getting the 5 years.
Oh,
cool.
Cool.
Hear
Okay.
like the actual kind of Misfits
That'd
story.
be cool as well,
We've kind of all spoke to you. Well, we will have spoke to you all individually
I'm pretty
at the
sure
time.
between the 5 years, I can't even remember off my top of my head, but there's been some absolute fucking laughs that have happened. Like, and these guys will know some of the stories. Like even we were talking about like the buses down to the fights. The damn buses used to get absolutely wild. Like,
they get funny. Man. Nah, definitely that'd be an awesome one to do. Yeah, I'd be really keen for that. That'd be awesome.
So
sweet,
nice.
Yeah, man, definitely.
We'll
Epic.
see you soon.
Awesome. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
This podcast is also available on Google Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify.